all the council members aren't coming up to the top of the screen for me like they normally do, but maybe they will in a little bit. So I see we're live, Jennifer. We're recording.
Yes, sir.
That being the case, I'd like to go ahead and call this October 13th meeting of Charleston City Council to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilwoman Del Chapo.
Here.
Councilmember Shealy.
Here.
Councilmember Saccharin.
Here.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Here.
Councilmember Brady.
Present.
Councilmember Gregory.
Present.
Councilmember Waring. Councilmember Seekings.
Here.
Councilmember Shade.
Present.
Councilmember Griffin.
Here.
Councilmember Appel.
Here.
Councilwoman Jackson. Mayor Tecklenburg.
Here. And Councilmember Jackson was here. Councilmember Waring might be having a little challenge getting signed on. I see him coming online right now. And Councilmember Waring, we just called the roll. We're counting you present.
Thank you.
And you are on our agenda to give our invocation if everyone would like to join. Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In entering to prayer, I'm saying a prayer for pandemic. It's actually not mine. It's actually by a lady named Miss Cameron Bellum. She's actually out of Seattle. She's a mom and a homemaker. Let us pray. A prayer for a pandemic. May we who are merely inconvenienced remember those whose lives are at stake. May we who have no risk factors remember those most vulnerable. May we who have the luxury of working from home remember those who must choose between preserving their health or making their rent. May we who have the flexibility to care for our children when their schools close remember those who have no option. May we who have to cancel our trips remember those who have no safe place to go. May we who are losing our margin money in the tumult of an economic market remember those who have no margin at all. May we who settle in for a quarantine at home remember those who have no home. As fear grips our country, let us choose love. During this time when we cannot physically wrap our arms around each other, let us yet find ways to be loving, embrace of God to our neighbors. These prayers we ask for in your name. Let us all say amen.
Amen.
Amen. Let's stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Boy.
I pledge allegiance to
Allegiance
the
to the flag
of the United
States of America
and to the
and to
republic
the
which it stands,
for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice
for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Waring. That was a lovely prayer. I would like to just note, council members and those who are on the line, the passing of two amazing individuals and citizens of the city of Charleston. I will be presenting a proclamation from council at their family services from myself and from you all, and that's to Ade Ofunian, lovingly known as Dr. O, who founded and headed up the Gullah Society. He was a grandson of the famous Philip Simmons, and he was an amazing person. He helped us not too long ago, the city, with our reinterment of remains that were uncovered at the Gill Yard. He was just an amazing individual. In addition, our city suffers the loss of Judge Bernard Fielding, who served many years in the probate court and whose family is well recognized here in their funeral services business, and amazing individual, attorney, judge, business person, human being. and Judge Fielding. So I did want to note their extreme value to our city and their passing. We do have two proclamations. The first is one recognizing all of our he's a friend of all of us, I should say, and that's Quentin Washington. And this was requested by Councilwoman Del Chapo and Councilman Griffin. But I must say, Quentin, we all consider you our friend, and this proclamation goes out from all of us. So, whereas the city of Charleston wishes to recognize a dedicated citizen, Quentin Washington. He's from Charleston, attended Burke High School, reporter and editor for the Burke High School's weekly TV newscast. Began his broadcasting career with WCSC TV in 1996 as an intern, and subsequently was a temp assistant for CIB and CBD. He's known throughout the Lowcountry for his work as a freelance journalist and has written news articles and columns appearing in Post and Courier and the Chronicle and others. He created and organized a town hall meeting to end poverty and homelessness in Charleston. Thank you for that, Quentin. Since 2012, he's hosted and produced a web show on YouTube called Quentin's Close-Ups. During this time, he's conducted thousands of one-on-one interviews with prominent Charlestonians and other South Carolina public figures. To produce his show, Quentin works independently to book guests, conduct research, compose questions and scripts, set up interviews, and shoot and edit video footage. Whereas Quentin Washington recently was recognized and honored by the United States Congressman Joe Cunningham on the floor of the United States Congress for Quentin's close-ups. In 2014, was also honored by the South Carolina House of Representatives for outstanding service in the field of news and broadcast journalism for the remarkable impact of Quentin's close-ups. Therefore, I, John J. Tecklenburg, Mayor of the City of Charleston, along with City Council, proclaim Tuesday, October 13th. That's today, Quentin. It's your day. It's Quentin Washington Day in the City of Charleston. I'd like to call on Councilmember Del Chapo and Griffin if they have any remarks, and then from Mr. Washington.
Well, Quentin, you are a treasure. And as much as I could go on and on about you, I actually have a few familiar faces who could express probably a whole lot better than I could. So here we go.
Ain't happening.
Somebody's supposed to share a screen, I think, with us.
Yeah, I thought I would be able to share my screen.
You have a little green button on the bottom middle, says.
Yeah, let's see if I can get it.
There you go.
Okay, perfect.
Hey, Quentin, this is Raymond Owens over at News 2. About a week or two ago, I was talking to another friend of mine in the business about one of your interviews and how much I got out of it. I just want to say keep doing great journalism and congratulations on the proclamation.
Quentin, congratulations on being honored by City Council tonight. So happy for you, and it's so well deserved. I've always admired your hard work and dedication to providing a community service here in the Charleston area. And I know so many others are appreciative of all that you do for this community. It's an amazing service, and thank you for doing that. I know you don't do it for the accolades or the recognition, but this is well deserved. Keep doing what you're doing with Quentin's Close-Ups. You're so appreciated in this city.
Quentin Washington, this is Bill Sharp, and congratulations on this proclamation. If anybody deserves it, Quentin, it is you. You've interviewed so many low-country personalities, TV personalities, and others, including yours truly, and you always do a great job. You let the personality himself or herself tell the story, and that's, I think, one of the best things you do, one of the many good things excellent things about your interviewing Quentin is you let people tell their story. So once again, Quentin Washington, we love you. We think you're terrific, and this proclamation is well deserved. I'm Bill Sharp, Live 5 News, and Quentin, I'm proud to call you a friend.
Every time I finish an interview with Quentin, I walk away saying, so that's what that feels like. Quentin knows everything that's going on in this community. He always does his homework, and he asks the right questions. Sometimes that's the tough question. Quentin is the very definition of a community journalist, but as much as anyone he interviews, Quentin Washington is providing a public service to Charleston.
Hello, my name is Layla Goulin, and I'm the host of News Now on Fox 24. When I moved here 5 years ago, I soon realized that I chose the right community to be a part of when I met Quentin Washington for the first time. He had asked to interview me, and I quickly learned that I was about to join a very impressive roster of individuals whom he chose to tell their stories. His commitment to community, his determination getting interviews I can't even get, and his commitment to telling stories is an inspiration, and I am so proud to call him a peer, a colleague, but most importantly, a friend. Love you, Quentin.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Del Chapo. Councilmember Griffin?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. You know, Quentin, you have a special place in my heart. From the first moment I met you, I was so nervous. I had on this, I didn't even have a suit at the time. I was running for I was wearing like some sort of leather jacket, and you didn't dismiss me, even though I'm sure you could tell I had no idea what I was talking about. You just looked at me and you made me feel special, and you gave me a platform for the first time. And I have never, ever turned down a request from you, and I never will, because in my eyes, you are what Charleston is. You are somebody who always brings optimism. You always have a smile on your face. You make us all better people, and you never sugarcoat anything. You know, you don't throw softballs. You make us do our jobs better, and we're very, very lucky to have you in this city. God bless you always. And thank you for your friendship. Everybody here is a friend to you because you've never met a stranger. And I hope you know that while there may be a few people around this city that don't show you the respect that you've earned, everybody on this council and 99.9% of this community love you with our whole hearts.
Thank you, Council Member. Mr. Washington. Again, happy Quentin Washington Day. Would you like to have a response, share a comment with us, sir? You're good? This is the first time I've ever known Quentin to be speechless. This is a remarkable day. Well, congratulations, Quentin. I can't hear you. You're on mute. Quentin, can you unmute yourself? I can't hear you, no. We can't hear you. Well, he wasn't really speechless after all. We couldn't hear him. All right, happy Quentin Washington Day. All right. So we have one other proclamation. This is recognizing the 230th anniversary of Carolina Youth Development Center. And they're almost as old as the city of Charleston, not quite. But any organization that's been around for 230 years in our city deserves recognition, but particularly when you do such good things. So if you'll indulge me, whereas Carolina Youth Development Center, originally named the Charleston Orphan House, is the oldest operating nonprofit in South Carolina, oldest one. It was created to empower and equip the community's most vulnerable children by providing a safe environment, educational support, and career readiness. In each year, CYDC serves more than 900 children and families in more than 15 counties, but mostly in Berkeley, Dorchester, and Charleston counties. In 2019, they opened New House, first independent living home in the Low Country, completed training in trauma-informed care practices for all staff, opened a teen after-school center, and matched funding from the South Carolina Department of Social Services. Same year, they received referrals for services from more than 15 surrounding counties and saw improvement in life skills among 90% of the youth that they help. They're committed to ensuring children are placed in the best possible setting based on their individual needs while protecting children, empowering families, and preparing youth for adulthood. Whereas the City of Charleston would like to thank this remarkable organization for its years of dedicated service to the Charleston community, we congratulate them on their 230-year anniversary. Therefore, I, John J. Tecklenburg, Mayor of the City of Charleston, do hereby proclaim this coming Saturday, October 17th, as Carolina Youth Development Center Day in the City of Charleston on their birthday. Councilmember Brady.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if you hear my dog barking in the background, I apologize. But I have the distinct pleasure of working for Carolina Youth Development Center, and being able to come to work every day. It's an immense sense of pride, not just for the long history, but for the good that we get to do day in and day out here in the community. And I'm sorry, Bev, I don't have a video, but I'd love to turn it over to our CEO, Beverly Harden, and hear a few words from her as well.
Hey, Bev.
Hey there. Thank you so much, Mayor, and thank you so much to the City Council for this wonderful recognition. We really, really appreciate it. It is quite a milestone, and we're so proud to be celebrating our 230th birthday. That just doesn't happen very often. We really appreciate the proclamation. We are so thankful that through hurricanes and wars and floods and now a pandemic, our 230-year legacy has proudly withstood the test of time. Through it all, we've grown, changed, transformed, and we continue to ensure care, healing, and preparation for South Carolina's children and families. Thank you for this proclamation, and thank you for your commitment and service to our community and our children and families.
God bless you. Thank you for the work that you do. It's really amazing. All right.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I think Quentin has finally found a way to unmute himself and would like to say.
Great. Quentin, are you there?
Yes, sir. I think you can hear me, can you?
Yeah, I can now.
Okay, cool. I'm supposed to know how to use Zoom by now. But thank you to obviously Councilwoman Marie Del Chapo and obviously Councilman Harry Griffin for this proclamation. And thanks to the City Council as well. This is home. I love what I do. And, it's my job to hold you all accountable and get the truth out of you. And I hope I can continue to do that. And I hope I can continue to provide a public service to this community. So thank you so much.
You're most welcome. You do provide an amazing service to our community, Quentin.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Gregory.
I just want to tell Quentin, I'm coming, Quentin. I know it's been a couple of years. Okay? It's coming, all right? Soon.
Sounds like you're late for the interview. Councilmember Appel, did you have your hand up?
Mayor, I was just going to say that Quentin had found a way to unmute himself. And now that I've got the floor, I just want to recognize Quentin. He is the man, in a time when media is biased from the left and from the right. You're never going to find a more straight shooter than Quentin Washington. And all I'll say for any news media outlets, nationally, regionally, locally that are watching, you will hire yourself one amazing journalist if you're looking for one right now. They don't make them better than Quentin Washington.
Thank you.
Councilmember Waring.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quentin, I want to say congratulations, but he has a unique place in this community. He comes, I guess, investigative journalism. He comes with a smile, and I promise you, after the hard questions and everything's over with, he's going to leave with a smile, and you will too. Now, I don't know many people in investigative journalism that comes out that way, but look at all the online interviews. Look at the beginning, look at the end. And the interviewee, as well as Quentin, is smiling afterwards. He's just a friend to everyone. Thank you so much for what you do, Quentin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Quentin. Anyone else? All right. So, well, we're recognizing folks. He is not expecting this, and might even be embarrassed, but I wanted to thank Councilmember Appel and his wife Alexis for coordinating and providing luncheon one day recently for our public service workers, particularly our environmental services workers. They work so hard. They're on the front line every day out there looking after our city and serving our citizens. And Councilmember, thank you for going out the way to provide a Rodney Scott barbecue luncheon for everybody. I think it was week before last. Appreciate that that effort. We do have one public hearing, and it's a requirement of this Justice Assistance Grant. And so I'm going to ask Chelsea Taylor, I believe, from Police Department to maybe set this up, and then we'll see if anybody has any comments. Chelsea, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. I'm actually going to pass it off first to Deputy Chief Broughton, who's on the call. She's going to provide a brief overview of some of our collaboration with mental health practitioners in the area and the programs that CPD has been undertaking. And then I'll probably take it back over from there after she's had the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Chelsea. Mr. Mayor, City Council members, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk about something that I'm passionate about and the police department is passionate about and is so important for the success of our collaboration with our other agencies. In 2014, we saw a need to work with our mental health, Charleston, Dorchester County Mental Health on some of the issues we're dealing with. And we entered into an agreement that we were the first police department in the state to embed a mental health professional in our police department. And what started out to be just a program to focus on children who witness violent crimes or any crimes is morphed into something else. But every child who witnesses some kind of violence is touched by our mental health professional or our victim advocates. And that's, like I say, never been done in the state before. It's a model that now has led to 9 departments in the Tri-County area looking at our program and receiving grants to provide mental health professionals in their department. It brings that mental health professional to our department to where every morning our victim advocates, our detectives, our mental health professional can look at the reports, can look at who needs to be contacted to get the assistance to these children, which now has grown to any victim of crime, but it does a lot of other things. And I can talk 3 hours, but I don't think we have the time for that tonight. But I just want to say that our mental health professional, Denise Jones, who we've had for the last 6 years, who's leaving us for a wonderful promotion with Department of Mental Health, went well above and beyond what we required from the initial program. Denise would go out on calls with us. She would do commitment papers. She would follow up relentlessly with people experiencing mental health crisis. She would collaborate with detectives. She would collaborate with officers to make sure they went back to the house and saw some of these children. It's such a wonderful program that we're so proud of. And I can't say enough about what Denise has done, but it also led to a lot more collaborations with Dr. Funsell and the Charleston Center, with Christy Danford and CCCJ. Like I said, I don't want to take all of Chelsea's fire because I'll talk for hours. I just want to say this grant's an opportunity to continue to be in the forefront of dealing with issues in law enforcement that are very difficult and sometimes challenging to go out on. Anytime we can get training, anytime we can collaborate, anytime we can give tools to our officers to ensure that we're providing that population of mental health, substance abuse disorder, and homelessness, it's a win for the whole city. So I ask you to please look at this grant and help us get those tools we need to be so successful and be the model that we are throughout the state. Thank you.
Thank you, DC Broughton. Thank you for all you do. Chelsea, back to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you all. Just to touch a little bit on the purpose of the JAG grant. This is actually a formula grant, so the city was allocated a certain amount of funding to use towards a variety of funding objectives. So the purpose of this grant is essentially going to be able to allow the department to revisit our calls for service and identify some of those calls for service that are low-level crimes. So from my perspective as the grant coordinator, having that data available is extremely helpful when we're pursuing other competitive grants to try to look at co-responder teams. Further, it's going to train an entire team of subject matter experts who will be familiar with the justice system. So I also wanted to just provide a brief overview of the work CPD has undertaken related to the opiate epidemic. And this is also through our community partnerships and other grant opportunities. It should be noted that while the programs that I'll discuss began as a response to the opiate epidemic, these initiatives ultimately seek to identify a rehabilitative response to all substance use disorders. Further, we recognize that many of the justice-involved individuals suffering from substance use disorders are experiencing co-occurring disorders with mental illness, and as DC Broughton noted, may also suffer from housing instability. And as such, the department continues to pursue these subject matter expertise and research evidence-based programs that encompass an access to resource for all of these issues. So I do just want to start by saying all of our officers have been trained in naloxone deployment and carry it with them while on duty. Several of our officers have emotional stories about their experience administering Narcan, and we do hope to gather those and share them with the public in the near future to bring awareness about these issues in our community. Since February of 2019, CPD has been a partner agency in the Addiction Crisis Task Force, which is a conglomerate of county stakeholders that range from law enforcement, treatment facilities, peer support groups, nonprofit organizations, among many, many, many others. The task force was spearheaded by U.S. District Court Judge Brucey Hendricks, and it essentially pulls together experts across these fields to identify gaps in services. Since joining the task force, CPD has made improvements to our data collection and namely our overdose tracking. This past February, we joined on with the Charleston County Sheriff's Office and the Charleston Center to form the Metro Quick Response Team. The goal of this team is to respond to an overdose within a 48-hour period and connect that individual with the pathway to recovery. We had about 5 CPD officers, many who have personal connections to the opiate epidemic, who volunteered to be on this team and received training from the Charleston Center on the language of recovery, the science behind substance use disorders, and actions that they can take to reduce stigma surrounding substance use disorder. When we look at this program in practice, essentially a CPD quick response officer will be notified that an overdose occurred. They will then contact and pair up with a peer recovery coach at the Charleston Center. And then the two of them attempt to contact the individual and offer them local resources. Unfortunately, as I'm sure a lot of you can imagine, this program has been significantly limited due to the coronavirus pandemic, but we do look forward to growing this program and plan to evaluate its efficiency after this pilot phase. In addition to our involvement with the Addiction Crisis Task Force, we did recently receive a grant from the Police Assisted Addiction Recovery Initiative. This organization is best known by its acronym PARI, and this is to hire on a capacity building position through their AmeriCorps Vista program. So the position will assist the Metro Quick Response Team and the task force with evaluating our current programs related to mental health, substance use, and housing instability. They're going to assist us with researching credible co-responder models and solidify our existing community partnerships. So we've not yet hired anyone on for this position. Applicants are pre-screened through PARI, but we are looking forward to the opportunity to support and create non-arrest pathways to treatment and recovery. And we're hopeful that we'll be able to take more informed strides towards this goal with the support of our community partners. So I'm happy to answer any specific questions that I can related to these grants or the grant that's currently on for public hearing. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. Madam Clerk, did we have anyone from the public sign up to say anything about this?
We did not have anyone sign up to speak on this matter.
Any questions or comments?
I'll move for approval.
Second. Second. All right, Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much for being with us, Deputy Chief and Chelsea. I'm sorry, I don't know your title, but I know you're doing great work for the CPD, bringing in very innovative and collaborative opportunities. And I think that's just really, it's a no-brainer to sort of make the obvious point that, you know, we are hoping to impress the community and win a lot of friends for our public safety division and the way that we are approaching doing our jobs in the community for people. We all know that there are many reasons that the police are on the front line, but dealing with the kinds of conditions and situations that you were just explaining to us, Chelsea. So I do feel like as much as we can make those connections for people so we're not seen as some monolithic policing department, but we are doing the work that the community needs done to provide true safety and health for our citizens. And I just can't be prouder to be on this team with y'all, hearing a little bit behind the scenes, what you and Wendy Stiver are up to in recent months. It's just amazing to think that we have these jumping off places that we can all go together. So thank you so much for being with us. I really appreciate what you told us tonight.
Thank you, council member. Anyone else? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. So Chelsea, Chief, Deputy Chief, all of you, thank you so much. And it just shows the holistic approach to public safety and policing that the Charleston Police Department, I think, is becoming well known for. If you think about mental illness issues, domestic violence, victims of domestic violence, victims of child abuse, opioid and substance abuse issues, it's just an incredible holistic approach in addition to the mainstay job of crime enforcement, law enforcement that y'all provide our community. It's just amazing. Thank you. All right, so next is our approval of city council minutes. I think we got September.
I'll move.
Second.
Second.
Any additions, deletions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, Madam Clerk, is our citizens participation period. If you would lead that for us, I'd appreciate it.
We have 9 people signed up to speak. And Mayor, would you like to set a time limit?
Yeah, let's allow a couple of 2 minutes each, and because we also need a little time for you to share with us the emails and phone calls and things like that we've received.
All right, the first speaker is Stephen Long. And if you are on the line, if you will press *6 to unmute yourself. All right, next is Kimberly Dean.
If you're on a phone, you need to dial *6 in order to unmute your phone.
All right, Ronald Ferretra. And if you're on the line, please press *6. Karen Beard. I see Miss Beard on the line. If you press *6, you can unmute yourself. Stacy Hudson. Is that Miss Hudson? Zoe Berg.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Please identify yourself.
Hi. Yes, hi. Should I just dive in to my little speech then?
Yes, ma'am. Please introduce yourself first, because we called out a
Sure,
lot.
absolutely. Yes, my name is Zoe Berg. I'm the project director for Americans for Responsible Technology. We're a national science-based environmental health nonprofit organization in New York. We work with municipalities across the country to protect residents' interests when dealing with the telecom industry's deployment of wireless equipment in public rights of way. Should I continue?
Yes, ma'am. You have 2 minutes. Please proceed.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks so much for your time today. Despite the recent passing of the H4262, aka the Telecom Giveaway Act, there remain effective local measures that the Charleston City Council can take to protect constituents, particularly in residential areas, from 5G small cell antennas. While you cannot prevent telecoms from installing equipment that complies with FCC requirements based on health concerns alone, there are some things you absolutely can do and include in an updated small cell ordinance. Requiring the telecom applicant to demonstrate a significant gap in personal wireless coverage at the desired installation site using dropped call data, implementing antenna installation setbacks from sensitive areas such as residences, schools, daycare facilities, requiring randomized RF radiation emissions testing of all wireless sites on an annual basis at the expense of the applicant, and requiring applicants to provide proof that they have general liability insurance without a pollution exclusion. Insurance companies generally regard wireless radiation as pollution. I was speaking with a woman from Westchester, New York just the other day who recently had a 5G antenna installed 20 feet outside of her bedroom window, an ugly, gray, ominous-looking structure. Immediately after the installation, she started having 2 to 3 nosebleeds a day. Once highly athletic and healthy, she's now constantly dizzy, nauseous, and fatigued. Her local legislators won't do anything to help her. She can't afford to move, and she fears for the health and safety of her children and husband. I know the council is likely feeling pressure from the telecom industry, as are many other local officials across the country.
Thank you so much for your comments tonight and being with us.
Next is Cashin Drolet. Mr. Drolet, if you're ready, just press *6.
Thank you. Good evening. Cashin Drolet with Historic Charleston Foundation. The foundation remains opposed to demolition of the St. Julian Divine smokestacks, as we believe they're a defining feature of the east side skyline. And we wish for the city to be committed to its own BAR ordinances and become a preservation example for Charleston's community. We maintain that there is a solution for preservation of the smokestacks and that it's within reach. I know there are some creative solutions that have been proposed as recently as today by Councilman Shade and others. I'm encouraged somewhat by the Ways and Means discussion from earlier today. HCF is supportive of hitting pause. That's what we've been asking council to do. We're supportive of a task force to give us some clear input, and as we learn more information on the condition of the stacks, to address the financing conundrum that we face and dramatically cut the risk and protect the community that lives adjacent to the stacks. We've not exhausted all our avenues to finding a solution. And again, we asked City Council to follow the lead of Ways and Means earlier today and grant a reprieve from the demolition order, grant that task force the appropriate time. That is going to be, I think, a group of bright minds to find a safe solution so that the iconic smokestacks are not lost. It was Councilman Shade, I think, who said earlier that once the smokestacks are gone, they're lost forever. So we would encourage council to follow the lead of Ways and Means earlier today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next is Christopher King. Mr. King, if you're ready, press *6.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Welcome.
Good evening, Christopher King with the Preservation Society. I want to just thank quickly Councilmember Shade for bringing forward, I think, a good plan, path forward for the smokestacks, and really appreciate and want to thank all members of council for the conversation tonight, and mostly want to just thank y'all for listening to the community on this. And we're excited about y'all creating the opportunity for us to work with you. Obviously, our goal is for the preservation, and we're going to work as hard as we can for that outcome, but also think it's equally important that council is presented with the information necessary to make the best decisions, and as well as to uphold your processes. And we have that opportunity now, so we are most appreciative for that and want to thank you. We continue to believe that we can work together to ensure the best outcome for the East Side, and we want to thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Christopher.
Jennifer Trudeau. And if you're ready, just press *6. Jennifer Trudeau. All right, I'm going to go back and repeat some of the names. Stephen Long, Kimberly Dean, Ronald Ferretra, Karen Beard, Stacy Hudson. All right, that was all that we had to sign up to speak, and then we did receive some comments. 31 people wanted to encourage City Council to preserve the St. Julian Divine Community Center smokestacks, as it is an integral structure of the East Side community. One person said public input needs to be allowed for further discussion of Laurel Island development. One person asked for City Council to support the removal of by right cluster for R1 zoning. One person asked for pictures of the John C. Calhoun statue for proof that it had not been mishandled. 31 people were in support of Charleston Coalition for Wireless Safety Standards. And 3 people want the city to think about how its spending is prioritized as CPD receives an overwhelming bulk of taxpayers' dollars. And that was all of the comments that we received.
Terrific. Thank you. Well, last call, any of those individuals that were called out, are you on the line? Can you *6? Well, hearing none, thank you everyone for your participation in all those forums, and we'll move on to our petitions and communication.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am. Who is that, please?
This is Stacy Hudson.
Yes, ma'am. Please proceed.
Okay, so I'm also speaking on behalf of Charleston Coalition for Wireless Safety Standards.
Yes, ma'am.
And I want to say as well that the passing of the Small Cell Facility Act does not mean all local involvement in small cell infrastructure ends. Charleston residents are not opposing technology. We're looking for a way to keep small cell antennas out of our neighborhoods and away from schools. That is our bottom line. We are asking council to find a way to provide a safe wired solution for the internet needs. Wired transmissions are faster, safer, more reliable, cyber secure, and energy efficient as compared to wireless transmissions. The only reason wireless transmissions are being pushed by the telecom industry is because wireless is cheaper and more profitable for the telecom industry. It has nothing to do with quality and speed of internet service. Charleston residents are asking for, quote, fiber to the home. Fiber can be run into individual homes just as copper wire was run by the companies many years ago. Telecom companies are already using vast amounts of fiber optics to send clear signals much further distances than wireless, but they stop short of running fiber into homes. When excellent speed and quality are delivered to the home via wire, the homeowner can then decide whether to hardwire home devices or to use Wi-Fi. Of course, the safe option is to hardwire devices, but the homeowner should have a choice. Our choice is taken away when Wi-Fi is mounted on the lamppost outside our homes, and that can be avoided. So please be sensitive to citizens' need to have a say about the types of exposures we're subjected to and to control our health. If these small cell antennas are placed near our homes and schools, we simply won't be able to get away from this RF microwave radiation. There are people who are already sensitive to the effects of 4G, and they would like the choice to avoid unnecessary EM radiation increases and to preserve their health. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm glad I had last call. So thank you for sharing that. I know the Wireless Coalition, by the way, had given us some recommendations. Our legal staff has been studying those, and Councilmember Waring, with your blessing at the next or a soon-to-be future Public Works Committee meeting, we'd like to make a report back to the committee and then to council on those matters.
By all means, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Thank you. So next up is petitions and communications, and I would kindly ask forbearance of council to allow me to defer the Tourism Commission appointments because there's a few people that may, after all, may not be able to serve. And there's not a commission meeting between now and our next council meeting. So I will come back to you for our next meeting and ask of those recommendations. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Guys have it. But we're good on these recommendations for the Commission of
I
Women.
move for approval, Mr. Mayor.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Next is our update on the city's response to COVID-19. I'm going to call on Tracy McKee for a few remarks about how we're doing at the city, and then she's going to introduce Dr. Michael Sweat from the Medical University. Tracy?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone's having a great evening. I think this is the earliest I've gone in quite a few weeks now, so this is good news. So let me get this in presentation. There we go. Okay, so I'll be very brief in my update tonight. I think everyone knows our local numbers remain low, which is very good. Just a quick update on employee cases. Still no new hospitalizations, which is excellent. We do currently have just one active case. With our numbers being low, we did move into phase 3 of our opening plan. That became effective October the 5th. The biggest change with our move to phase 3 was that city buildings have returned to their normal security access. That doesn't mean return to business as usual. We still are encouraging phone conferencing, video conferencing, and that citizens use digital services whenever possible. However, when there is a need for in-person meetings, masks are required, distancing is required, conforming to posted occupancy limits on conference rooms and offices. And we're also trying to be very cognizant of time because we know that this is airborne now, so that time factor is a trigger when we talk about contact tracing. So we're asking when it is necessary that we limit those to less than 15 minutes. So what's happening kind of at the local level here? This is just an updated chart. I've shown you this before, but it looks at the city new cases. Those are the gray bars compared to the county, what's happening in Charleston County, and the number of tests performed. So that's the number of tests is the red line at the top. So you can see here in the last just couple of weeks, tests as well as cases are trending just slightly upwards. But what does this look like when we get down to kind of our metrics? So here is the rolling 7 daily new cases per 1,000. So it's a kind of that rolling average, if you will. So that's the blue. And then we can see that infection rate on the orange line. And then up here, this dashed line, which is the 1.0 for our infection rate, that's our threshold of when we might need to go backwards if that does happen. So that's kind of, we're trending a little upwards, but we're still below that threshold, which is very good. I've shown this before, so I thought it was good to put these in context with over time. This comes from the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. So here's the snapshot way back in September, where South Carolina was very neutral in color. Remember, this is the redder it is, cases are increasing, the greener, the more that cases are decreasing. So back on September 21st, we were at least a nice pale green in South Carolina. And just yesterday, I pulled this again from JHU. You can see pretty much across the country, things are looking a little bit pink. In South Carolina, we are just a smidge pink, which is basically neutral, if you will. Daily cases. So across the US, I think everyone's aware the cases are going up ever so slightly across the country. And this is a graph that shows how we in the US compare to the 10 most affected countries in the world. So this orange line is actually the US, so compared to these other countries. So we know that cases are going up across the US, across the world, really. And so, you know, I think we need to try to understand what we can do to not be to do better, and not to fall into that trap as well. And so I'm really happy tonight that we have with us Dr. Michael Sweat from MUSC. And before I properly introduce him, I really want to publicly thank Dr. Sweat for the support that he and his team have provided to me as well as the city since the very beginning of the pandemic. His team was invaluable in helping us develop the metrics that guide our city phased reopening plan. He's been beyond generous and sharing both his time and his knowledge with us. He is a tenured professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at the Medical University of South Carolina and director of the MUSC Center for Global Health. Prior to joining MUSC in 2007, he was an associate professor and director of the Social and Behavioral Interventions Program in the Department of International Health in the Bloomberg School of Public Health at the Johns Hopkins University and is an adjunct professor there now. He is and has been the PI, or principal investigator, on many global health projects focused on HIV behavioral interventions, testing, and care. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I believe he has a few slides that he is going to share with us tonight.
Great. Thank you, Tracy. Just to say, I've enjoyed working with you immensely. I appreciate all your support as well. We're all in this together, so I can't tell you how much I enjoyed working with you. Mayor Tecklenburg and members of the council, thank you so much for having me come today and share with you a few evolving issues that are, I think, important as we move forward into the winter. Can you see my slides okay?
Yes, sir.
I just want to give you a little background. We set up the COVID-19 Epidemiology Intelligence Project really right when the epidemic kicked off. And our goal has been to track closely the trends and events and science that's going on around COVID to try to help inform decision-making and track what's happening with the epidemic. And as we're moving into the winter, I've been chatting with Tracy some and just some of the risks that we're facing. And I want to highlight those with you tonight. As well, just to say, you know, we're 7 months into this epidemic. It's been an evolving issue in terms of science and trying to understand what's happening. And really every week we're getting more information. So I'm going to highlight a few things that we've been honing in on. The first point I want to make is, you know, COVID-19 outbreaks, we're seeing this over and over, that they can become widespread quickly. And that's true even when case numbers are very low. It's kind of striking. Our typical thinking about epidemics is we drive the cases down and we sort of move forward and get back to normal. But with this epidemic, given the contagiousness of COVID-19, you can drive those numbers down and they can rapidly accelerate. And we're seeing that in multiple places. The other observation we're seeing now is that second surges are proving to be worse than first surges. And it's something we need to keep our eye on because we just went through a significant surge over the summer. And finally, I want to add that our ability to detect these outbreaks is lagged, it's delayed. So these things can blow up before we have a chance to really detect them. And just to make that point, this is from Charleston, the Charleston area that we've been tracking. And as you know, we had the initial little surge, little blip really when the epidemic first kicked off. And we drove those numbers down to extremely low levels. And then late in I guess that was May, the epidemic just exploded rapidly. So these can happen very, very quickly. Our ability to detect this is limited because we rely, our first indicator really has been primarily diagnosed cases that we get reported, but people don't go and get tested instantly. There's typically a delay of 7 to 10 days before those data become available, which means you can have these explosions before we really detect them. So it's just an important point to note. And I think you can see that here. This is from Europe, the number of cases per day per 100,000 people over time. For example, if you just take Spain, this first blip, I mean, it just rapid explosion occurred and they very effectively drove those numbers down. The point I want to make here is this: they're now into a second surge, which has exceeded the first surge. The same is true in France. It's more than 3 times the number of cases per day now being detected, the UK, and this is true in country after country that we're seeing in Europe. And I'm going to come back to some issues related to the potential impact of the winter weather. Second point I want to make is that I just think it's remarkable how behavioral prevention has proven to be so highly effective. It's really remarkable what can happen when people distance, wear a mask, wash their hands, and avoid indoor settings. And it's remarkably effective. I'd add to that policy-based restrictions, they do, I think, change behaviors. But it's both direct and indirect. And just to make that point, this is a metric that we look at, which is called the R-naught, and it really tells you the number of people that each person infected is going on to infect. And this is for Charleston County, actually. And in the beginning of this epidemic, we had just an explosive number of people getting infected from other people, up in the range of 8 and 9 from each person who was infected. That dramatically declined when the word got out and people became more aware, and we learned a little bit about distancing and such, and lockdowns occurred. Those lockdowns were incredibly effective. When that value goes below 1, the epidemic will start to diminish, and if it goes below 1 for long enough, it will go away. So we hovered down below 1, and then right here, just around Memorial Day, those lockdowns were lifted, and immediately we went above 1 substantially and stayed there for a period of time, which led to that massive outbreak that we saw in the summer. Right around the middle part of July, efforts were made to amplify use of masks, and to the credit of the council, those policies that were put in place, I believe, drove that number back down, and has stayed down around 1 or below. And until recently, we're starting to see some blips. This first blip occurred right around Labor Day, and the second one occurred right around the time that students, I believe, came back from university. We don't know for sure, but those are suspect events that occurred. I just want to say that when I say that these policies are both direct and indirect, certainly the policies themselves had some impact because people felt compelled to follow them. But I think when they're lifted in particular, it signals to people that things are better. And I believe that is what happened around this time. There was a lot of beliefs out there that the epidemic was under control, everything was fine, and people went out and interacted, and rapidly we saw a massive outbreak. So I just would encourage you to consider that when you're considering whether to put on or take off restrictions. I'm not a believer that we should live under perfect restrictions, but I think the way it's done when it's tied to metrics, which I know you're doing very carefully, is an important strategy to take. The third point here, I think there's strong emerging evidence that infections among young adults is initiating outbreaks. And as time passes in an outbreak, older people become infected from those younger people. So it's a critical target group we need to hone in on. I just want to point out a few things out. This was the first month of the epidemic that we experienced here in Charleston County. And this shows the distribution of the new infections that were occurring by the different age groups here. And this is the most recent month. And this has really shifted from a more equal distribution across all age groups to much younger. The group that has the highest infection rate right now is actually people 11 to 20, and also age range 21 to 30. If you really drill down on this, it's really young adults. It's really people between 17 and 21, 22 that are accounting for the vast majority of the new infections that are occurring. And you can see the decline in the median age that has occurred over time. There's been a new study that just came out by CDC just a few days ago really excellent study they conducted where they went into over 700 hotspots in the country and looked closely retrospectively at the infection rates among different age groups. And they found two key things. One is the epidemics are typically initiated. These slopes go up first about a month before they're detected as a hotspot among people 18 to 24 years old. And then within about 2 or 3 weeks, you begin to see increases occurring in people in older age groups. So again, very strong evidence that what's driving outbreaks primarily is infections among young people that's eventually transmitting on to the older population. Next point I want to make is new information, which was mentioned, Tracy mentioned this, about aerosol transmission being recognized as a risk. This really raises questions about our recommendations for the 6-foot distancing indoors. And this, just quoting the CDC here, I won't go through the whole slide, but they recently recognized the fact that people are being infected through aerosols being very small particles that are expelled when people breathe or sing or talk, and they can accumulate and float in the air for hours in enclosed spaces, particularly where there's poor ventilation, and particularly when people are shouting or singing or exercising. Bars, you get a lot of loud talking. There have been multiple outbreaks among choral groups who've practiced indoors. One was just reported several days ago. So again, this has a strong impact on recommendations around distancing and also ventilation and what could be done in places like restaurants where you could easily just open windows. Even if it's cooler outside, it can make a significant difference. Another study that just came out this summer where they looked at, went back and did case analyses of over 300 people that were infected across 11 different facilities. And they looked at a host of factors that people had engaged in the previous 2 weeks, and the only two that showed significance were visiting a restaurant or visiting a bar or a coffee shop. And what the point here is, this line, if these bars cross that line, it means it's not significant. These, as you can see in this bar right here, is significant, showing that those factors really are associated predominantly among people who've been getting infected. Another point to make, there's emerging data. It's not perfect, but it's suggesting that cooler weather is maybe associated with outbreaks, and conversely, hotter weather may be associated with outbreaks in places with heavy air conditioner use. And I just have a couple of graphs to point that out. This is the current map of the US, similar to what Tracy showed you. The current places with really explosive epidemics, high rates of infection: North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Wisconsin, Utah, Nebraska. This whole area in the northern part on the border with Canada, it's getting cooler. People are coming inside. There's a really massive epidemic happening in the Fox River Valley around Green Bay. So what we saw was the first outbreak in New York during a cooler season. When things warmed up, it moved to the south. And then when things are cooling down, we're seeing outbreaks in these areas. And that's a signal that perhaps cooler weather or hotter weather when people use air conditioning is associated with outbreaks. This is just another analysis breaking out the different states. These are the average temperatures across the bottom. And when it's cooler, these locations are the ones that have the highest rates of transmission. And this was for recently. If you look back over the summer, this reverses where you see the higher rates with the higher temperatures. And then finally here, looking at Europe one more time, just to note that they had an incredibly high rate of transmission. As soon as it warmed up, it went down, and you might expect warm weather to be associated with higher rates. However, in Europe, they don't use air conditioning like we do. So this is leading many people now to wonder whether cooler weather coming is going to create problems for us. I just want to summarize a few key points. I think there are multiple risks that are potentially converging as we move forward into the fall and winter. And one is the holidays coming. There's going to be incredible cultural pressure for people to gather in groups and indoors because it's a wintertime situation. The other one is transmission from youth. Schools are now opening up more and more. There's a lot of uncertainty about the K through 12 population. Most of the data is suggesting that the youngest of kids they get infected equally to other people, but they don't seem to transmit as much, although those data are still nascent. But as you get older in high school and approach college age, the transmissions rates seem to shoot up. And we know that universities have had a poor track record on containment and high transmission probability, as I pointed out. And then the fatigue. I mean, we're facing fatigue. People have been on restricted activities for 7 months now. I think we know from strong evidence from behavioral science that after 3 months, people have a difficult time maintaining that. This, what we call the paradox of prevention, where when things are better and people perceive that the problem is more under control, they begin to take more risk. At the time they need to engage in the prevention the most often is when people are the least willing to do it. And then these issues with aerosol transmission, I think, are important, because if we have more indoor gatherings in the colder weather, that suggests that aerosols could lead to significant outbreaks. And finally, just winter, shifting into more indoors. There's a lot of evidence, as I pointed out, about the potential temperature effects on risk-taking. And I'd add to that that, you know, the whole Northern Hemisphere is about to go into a cool season, which is novel for this epidemic. And we could potentially see harmonized outbreaks across the country and in the entire Northern Hemisphere, which could put stress on our ability to have adequate resources in terms of testing, PPE, the commodities, the staff, the beds. And then flu season is coming as well, and that could add to it. So we do see a sort of confluence of potential risks going forward. And I don't mean to be too negative, but I think we need to be vigilant as we proceed and attend to these things. So I just want to end on that, and also just to give some thanks to my project team. These have been incredible people, including several medical students who've been donating their time to help weed through all these data that we collect regularly. So I thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
We thank you, Dr. Sweat, for your amazing collaboration with us from the very start on this, as Tracy mentioned. Council members, do you all have any questions or comments for Dr. Sweat? Well, I think you've done such a complete job. You answered all the questions as we went. Once again, Doc, thanks for being with us and all the help.
My pleasure. Happy to help.
God bless you.
Take
care. We've got a couple of emergency ordinances to update. If I could call on Susan Herdenia to give us a summary of those, number 3 and 4. Susan, are you out there?
I'm out here. Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening. We have 2 emergency ordinances to consider tonight. They're actually amendments to previous emergency ordinances that you've all approved. The first one, item I3, is basically incorporating some recent changes that were issued by the governor in his executive order on October 2nd. And there he lifted the occupancy restrictions on restaurants and bars. So what our amended emergency ordinance does, it's page 5, section 6, is that we are similarly deleting the occupancy restrictions. However, the governor's order did incorporate a series of restrictions and conditions that were placed upon restaurants and bars for their continued operations during this emergency time. And we have verbatim incorporated those into our ordinance. And you'll see there's a number of items there. I think there's actually a total of 20 different ones. And again, these are all items that were included in the governor's executive order, having to do with masks and requiring employees to be tested and sanitation and other good practices. So that is the only change to our ordinance 2020-100. That's item I3. Item I4 is an emergency ordinance, which is extending the period of time where we are going to continue our temporary restrictions and regulations regarding expanding outdoor dining. And so that emergency ordinance, which allows for greater outdoor dining areas in the city and a temporary suspension of the zoning ordinances and other regulations that apply to outdoor dining, will be extended for another 60 days. However, there is also a provision in there that requires staff to take a look at our current zoning regulations and other ordinances with an eye toward making the temporary regulations that are contained in our emergency ordinance to move toward making those permanent to help the restaurant industry. So that is the second emergency ordinance that we're asking for approval tonight. That's item I4.
Can I entertain a motion for I3 and I4?
So
Move for approval, Mr. Mayor.
Second. Any discussion or question, Councilmember?
Yes, can we take them separately, please?
We can. Let's take I3 first.
Move for approval.
Second. Yep. Councilmember Seekings, then
Thank
Jackson.
you. Just a brief question for Ms. Herdina. Is there a point at which, under the emergency ordinance, that we are due to get a report back from the planning staff about taking out the temporary portion of the zoning ordinance for the outdoor dining and making it more permanent? I mean, at some point, we need to bisect those and get that on our agenda going forward, so we're not doing all this at one night.
Well, the way the ordinance is drafted right now, and if we need to amend it, we can do that, but we are basically directing, or you're directing staff to come back prior to expiration of this emergency ordinance and make those recommendations to council.
So it'll be sometime short of 60 days from now.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Jackson and Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I really am just sort of attaching my question to either one of these ordinances. I know that Councilmember Saccharin was very vigilant, I believe, to ask about the reopening of the full market on Marion Square. So I just want to follow up with that. It's been a few weeks since the market opened to the produce vendors only. And I know that the other vendors are still very, keen on getting out to be able to sell their own crafts as soon as possible. So I'm hoping that maybe you can give us an update, and I'm sorry to add it on to this conversation, but there's really no other good place in the agenda. Thanks.
So as I mentioned, we were doing that kind of step by step. This Saturday, we'll be reopening the Esplanade along the King Street side with a number of the other vendors, not farmers, but other vendors. And I think we're going to rotate for just a couple of weeks, give everybody an opportunity, but not have everybody at once. And they're planning a full holiday market also, leading up to the holiday season. So it's happening. We're getting.
Thank you. I would appreciate an update as we go along. A couple of weeks is not the holidays, so let's speed it up, please.
I said this Saturday we're beginning, Councilmember.
Right.
Yeah,
that's great. Thank you.
October 17th. Councilmember Griffin.
As I stated previously, I will be voting nay for both of these, not because I don't support removing the restrictions, but I'm just not supportive of any more emergency orders. So I just want to make that point clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other questions on I3? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Gregory, I voted nay. I think that was.
I did. There was that Gregory.
Yeah, I said Gregory and Griffin.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Now for I4, can I entertain a motion for approval?
A second.
Discussion on I4. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. You guys have it. So next we had promised council we would come back to you with a report on in-person meetings for council and Ways and Means Committee. Could apply to other committees as well, I guess. So Tracy McKee and our safety staff have been looking into that, along with IT, which is important because we'll be, proposing to operate somewhere else rather than council chambers, because you can't get many people in council chambers with the distancing. So Tracy, you want to take it away?
Yes, sir. Thank you. And good evening again, everyone. I want to really thank Rick and Wes for all the work that they did in gathering information. This was a serious team effort to put this in front of you all tonight. And even though I'm going to be speaking, they are available to answer questions. So there are kind of three areas that we focused on for this proposal. Technology, right, because that is a challenge, but health and safety, as well as citizen engagement. So making sure that we thought about all those three elements and putting this together. So around health and safety, I think the first point here is that this is really about risk reduction and not elimination, right? So elimination is going to be, we continue to meet via Zoom or there's a vaccine in place. So probably the most important things when we talk about health and safety and risk reduction, kind of like our phased reopening plan in the city, we're talking about masks, spacing, and time. Jam Park, I should mention, also reviewed this and worked with us really closely to talk through what this might look like. So obviously, everyone would be indoors, and as we just were talking about, this virus does transmit through the air. So there is that risk. So masks would be required at all times. And because of that increased risk of transmission with time and indoors, we have to reduce the risk in other places. So we're going to do that in areas such as distance. So the distance between everyone would be greater than 6 feet, if you will. So we'd have a check-in station for the public that wanted to attend. This would include temperature checks as well as a COVID questionnaire. That would be most likely performed by our wellness and safety folks. We'd have signage, right, to help everyone move safely around and to navigate to navigate good traffic flow so that we don't have people bunching up, if you will. And of course, we need additional staff to assist with that traffic control, traffic flow, and occupancy awareness, and managing a staging area if that would be needed. So locations and capacity. So we've looked at a number of places that we could do this, and where we ended up as really the best option was using the Gilliard. We would use ballrooms 1 and 2. Ballroom 1 would be for council and staff. That could be up to 21 occupants. We would then use the ballroom 2 for the public, and that could be up to 50 occupants then. So obviously it would just be one big room, but we did that kind of just for measuring and purpose and kind of sequestering, blocking off spaces. So costs, there's no rental fee for us to use it. However, there would be some GC staff, some Gilliard Center staff that would need to be there, as well as some cleaning that would need to be handled for $575. That's for each meeting. And then the city would also be responsible for security as well as doing the temperature checks. Technology. Wes was really busy trying to determine what were the real technology needs and what made the most sense and what could we do. So I know he worked with our vendor to really get this number down. So I think he did a really great job. But the technology cost would be $27.25 per meeting. So that would include 15 microphones. So every council member would have their own microphone, one for the mayor, one for the clerk, and then we'd have one for the public. So this also includes all the audio system and feeds that are necessary. This also includes the videographer that would record and live stream to YouTube just like we do. However, this proposal does not allow for virtual participation. The technology was simply too complicated and too expensive to really make this work. And Wes is available if there's some questions or concerns about that. But it would also include 2 large displays, a laptop, and connectivity. So we could have presentations done as well. Citizen engagement. So citizens could still submit their comments for online for citizens participation or public hearings, just like they do now. So that would continue. They would have to sign up they would have to be in person to sign up to speak. So they would have to show up and sign up there, and it would be attendance, and speaking would obviously just be first come, first serve. And like I said before, there'd be a check-in station along with the temperature checks and COVID questionnaire. We've had extra masks, but we also gave some consideration for triage areas in case we have more than 50 people that would want to attend. So we would need to have them staged appropriately if they would like to speak during city council. So some of the other considerations that we talked about, the city would need to have a position on individuals that would like to attend, but have an exemption from mask wearing. So if someone shows up, wants to speak, wants to attend, they have an exemption. We really can't tell them they can't, but we would have to consider what that might look like. So ADA considerations, honestly, that would really just be like it used to be, that they would need to register with Janet Schumacher in advance, and we would do everything we could to accommodate them. Obviously, we would encourage the public to show up early, just to make sure that we could get them through all the protocols that we have in place. Just make sure that public participation happens as early in the meeting as possible. And so the minimum cost for each meeting would be around $3,500. And plus we figure with just the number of staff that will need to manage kind of traffic flow and the wellness checks and whatnot, there would probably be some staff overtime as well. Another consideration is simply that we've started to track the number of engagements that we've had through all of our online meetings. And we thought that you all might find this interesting. So Jennifer pulled this, that in 2019, there were 319 comments via phone and in person. And then the chart below shows our engagements with City Council just since March. So it's been 12 meetings. Almost 700 comments have been submitted through the portal. 143 people have signed up to speak, and we've engaged with 683 unique citizens through the portal and through these Zoom meetings. And I think that's all I have. And of course, happy to try to answer any questions that you all might have. And I do know Rick and Wes, I believe, are on as well to help answer any questions.
All right, Councilmember Shade.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Tracy, the 27.25 for the use of microphones, is that a rental?
I don't believe it's a rental. I believe it's with a company similar to, it might be the same company that does our videography. So I think they would come in and do all the audio, video. They would handle all that for us, if you will.
And just want to make sure I understand. So it's 27.25 per meeting.
Yes.
For the audio visual. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
That's correct.
Yes, sir. That covers, this is Wes, that covers all the equipment to provide the audio
and allow us to tie in the videographer for the streaming and the recording, ultimately what goes to Comcast as well. So that's everything from this local vendor who's been a partner with us for a lot of other city meetings. They've got all the gear and equipment together. They bring this package in, set it all up, test it, turn it over to the IT staff, and then we present the meeting.
My question with that was along the lines, hopefully we get back to regular meetings back in council chambers, and hopefully sometime soon when we have these remote meetings like we've had in the past at different churches and other locations. We've been using this, it's been very cumbersome, a pass around mic. And I'm just wondering if it would be more cost effective if we just had remote mics available for every council member, even when we go on the road.
Yes, sir. We've been looking at that. We have in the past. That's a comprehensive package you have to put together with all the equipment. You have to have amplifiers it feeds back to, the speaker systems. You got to have all the heavy duty casing to package that up, to haul it. It's a notable investment, but we have been looking at that to cover more of our remote meetings and meetings that may come up. And the mayor and I even discussed this, that there's kind of a tipping point if we're going to do a lot of these meetings. At what point do we just invest in the equipment ourselves to carry this forward? So depending on whether we just do a few meetings or go to a larger number of remote meetings may ultimately impact that decision, but we are considering that. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Councilmember Griffin, then Del Chapo.
So why can't we meet at City Hall?
Well, we can, but I think safety, Rick, did you measure out how many folks we would allow in City Hall?
Yes, sir, I did. With the current restrictions right now, we can only get 14 people in council chambers.
So we could meet there, but we wouldn't be able to allow in-person public comment, which I thought was a good part of the reason for us considering to meet in person.
And why can we only allow 14?
Because of social distancing and the 6-foot requirements.
Well, other municipalities are all meeting in their chambers. So I don't know, maybe they're not following the rules, but they're all meeting in their chambers. I mean, I can't imagine that we would put up a slideshow to try to show that it's going to be too expensive to do this. You know, I mean, we have constantly met off site in years past, at least 4 times a year. And we haven't met off site once this year. And we've been over Zoom for the last 7 or 8 months. So I would assume we've probably saved some cost in regards to, instead of meeting in the council chambers and the costs associated with that. I'd like to see some of those numbers too, because to me, that little slideshow almost seemed like a deterrent to meet in person. And I don't really appreciate that.
Councilmember Del Chapo.
Again, I'm just bringing forth an idea for discussion. I have no attachment to its outcome. Given we're at the middle of October, I think we have 5 meetings left this year. Do we want to make a decision that come the first of the year, we're going to meet in person unless, God forbid something, out of the ordinary happens? Do we want to go ahead and make that commitment? And then that gives us an understanding of what we're going to have to do come the first of the year and where that's going to be. I just would like us to get I know it's hard to get a definitive plan, but to somehow make a plan for ourselves and have a time frame. Or do we want to go ahead and start earlier and with these guidelines in place? Again, I'm not attached to the outcome anyway, just some thoughts.
Right. Well, that's a good thought. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud myself, but, we have saved some money. We have saved some money not having other city hall meetings. So maybe we try in November to have one of these meetings at the Gilliard and do the rental, use the firm, see how we like it. You know, if we're going to continue on, as Wes mentioned, there's not too many meetings at that expense where it wouldn't make sense to go ahead and buy a new sound system, a portable sound system, and all the microphones and all, and then we'd have it for the future a remote meeting, or when we go on the road, even after COVID's over with. Just a suggestion. We could try it, see how it works, and come back with from there. Councilmember Shealy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Rick and Wes and Tracy. Appreciate all your work on this. Thank you very much. But I just want to clarify, we have a screen and we have a sound system in the City Hall chambers. Could we not move that to the Gilliard, especially without other things going on right now? Is that not possible?
No, sir, that really wouldn't be feasible. It's all integrated into a rack system in that closet that you can't see. All the cabling involved, the wireless receivers. It's a lot of equipment, and it's specifically designed to fit in a static scenario in the council chamber. So it's not something we would want to try to rip out and relocate.
Okay. And one more question. You know, I go to a lot of fall high school sporting events right now, particularly volleyball. And they've been very fortunate. I know that other places around the country haven't been as fortunate, but you know, we play in Dorchester, Beaufort, Berkeley, and Charleston County, of course, and everyone wears a mask, everyone comes in. They use a simple app. I mean, there's no tickets, there's nobody touches anything, but they use a simple app when they come in to show that you purchased your tickets on that high school's app on your phone. And that's the only way you can get in, is if you've got a phone and you got an app, then you can come in because you can show your ticket and you actually punch everything saying, okay, your ticket's been punched. That type of system seems like it would be maybe more efficient than having any other kind. If you want to sign up, you come to speak, come to a city app and you punch in that you want to speak, and maybe go ahead and put your name and address in there for the clerk. But you know, it's something that all of these high schools are doing right now, and I just think that would be a simple solution. I don't think it's very expensive for those high schools, but it would eliminate somebody from having to write down who's speaking and all of that and keep track of it. Just do it on an app and it's automated, basically. So just a suggestion.
Tracy, and then Councilmember Gregory.
Yeah, I mean, we did talk about how we could use technology as far as citizens signing up to speak, and we went through a lot of different iterations, if you will. You know, I think we landed on people needed to kind of show up in person because that's how it was before, and we didn't want to make it overly burdensome for those that may not have a smartphone or something like that to be able to come and participate at City Council. So that was our thinking, but that doesn't mean that we can't change it. We're certainly open to any suggestions that you all would have.
Councilmember Gregory, and then Waring.
Yeah, all I wanted to say was I just can't imagine sitting in a marathon 8 to 9 hour meeting of council with a mask on for 8 or 9 hours nonstop. That in and of itself for me would really hinder me from putting myself in that kind of situation. And secondly, as an elder, while I may not have any preconditions, I've been extremely careful in terms of my interactions outside of my home. So again, that gives me some hesitation about moving away from our Zoom meetings to in-person meeting. But just the thought of sitting with a mask on for 6, 7, 8 hours will be an unbelievably grueling experience, I think, for all of us. And I just think we need to take that into account as we make our decision.
Thank you. Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Listen, I I definitely believe we got to get back to meeting in person. And two things, we do need to move forward and buy, I think, the equipment, and I'll tell you why. Even when we get a vaccine, everybody's not going to take it. So safe measures is, everybody doesn't take the flu vaccine now. So I think COVID, we're going to be living with COVID another year, maybe even two. And we certainly can't be doing business like this for another year or two. So I think, and it's equipment, even after COVID, we'd be able to use that equipment because we still go on the road and need proper microphones and the like. So I think the answer is twofold. We get the equipment, and I think the second thing is, Mr. Mayor, I know it's been a tradition to have staff, a good bit of staff at every council meeting, but maybe during this COVID piece, if we reduce staff, that would allow more people from the public to be properly spaced in city council chambers. And Councilman Gregory, I hear you on the marathon meetings. I think we all feel the same way, including the mayor. But I think somehow, maybe on this Zoom, it's given us more comfort to, I don't know, to talk longer, or have longer presentations, or whatever. But we certainly need to keep that in mind. And we all kind of have responsibility on that. So I'm wondering if some people could, staff, for example, maybe we can have the technology where they can call in if a question, they can be available by phone, just like some staff are available by phone right now. We have an iPad in front of us, spaced out in City Hall. I think we ought to take another look at doing it in City Hall, Mr. Mayor. Reduce the staff there are a number of staff that has come to meetings in person. Oftentimes, frankly, it's good to have them there, but a lot of times they're not necessarily needed to be there, which again would allow more than 14 people to come in. And then even if they're outside the hall, even doing outside in the hallway, they can space, 8 feet apart and get, maybe a half a dozen or more. I think we need to look at City Hall a little bit in another way. I think we can do better than just get 14 people in particular, if we have staff on an iPad at the ready. Certainly legal and certain people would need to be in the room, but we may not need to have 15, 20 staff people in City Hall to be able to conduct this meeting. Too many other bodies, again, the Congress, that's 535 people for the most part. And then we have to subtract out the one who's positive, but county council meets, another city council meets across the state. We can figure this one out. So I think we need to get back to meeting in person. I think we should be in person when we vote on our budget in particular, as opposed to online. So that's my feeling on that one. I'll kind of be quiet and listen to the rest of the council members on that. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, council member. How do y'all feel about allowing council members who have any kind of health concerns to be able to continue to participate in the meeting telephonically?
Or with an iPad.
Or with iPad, I mean.
Right, I would support that, certainly.
I see general shaking of head. And I must respectfully say, Rick has done, Markowitz, he's our director of safety. He's done a remarkable job at all of our facilities and spacing things out, making sure everybody's safe. And you heard Dr. Sweat tonight talk about enclosed spaces and all like that. I love our city council chambers, but it's just not laid out very well to where we can spread out. And so I would again suggest that just if y'all want to give it a try, let's try it at the Gill Yard once, see how it goes. If we're comfortable, we can invest in some equipment, and as conditions change, we can move back into the smaller space. But if the goal is to be able to allow, and I agree, we can limit staff to those who we know have some role on the agenda that night, and then ask other people to be available for a phone call if needed. That's a great idea. But still, just us as 13 people and immediate staff, you're going to have 5 or 8 people. I mean, we want to reserve room for the public to be able to attend. That's part of the point of all this. So if that sounds okay with y'all, I'd like to suggest we try a meeting in November at the Gilliard. Councilmember Shade and then Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple thoughts I just want to share with council. I had to appear in federal court last week up in Columbia, and I wish I had invested in plexiglass companies. It was a plexiglass city. I mean, it really was. In the courtroom, there was plexiglass dividers everywhere, and they're getting ready to start a jury trial up there in a couple of weeks, and every juror's seat had, well, they were in a cage of plexiglass. There's a plexiglass between me and my client. We couldn't hear each other talk because of the thickness of the plexiglass, and so we had to walk around, and which defeated the idea of having the plexiglass in the first place. It was difficult to hear other court personnel, hear the judge, hear witnesses. It was an excruciating problem because everybody was wearing a mask, which was required in the courtroom, in plexiglass. And then we heard from Dr. Sweat that as you're talking, that the mask in and of themselves is not sufficient in closed quarters, and 6 feet may not be sufficient. So I just want to caution everybody as we go through this process that there are other considerations that we need to be taken into account as we lay out these plans and lay out the room that we're going to be using. I want to get back into city council chambers. You see my background because I miss being in city council chambers, and there's a lot of historic reasons for doing that, and it's part of what we need to be doing because we have access to our citizens that can communicate with us. But if we're going to be doing this, if we're going to be even at the Gilliard, we're going to have to take in consideration installing plexiglass between us because 6 feet may not be sufficient. We just heard that. And we're going to have to make sure that not only are our sound systems available, but you got it incorporated into this, just one microphone for public use. And that's going to be another problem with that. And that's going to be a transmittal device if we don't sanitize that microphone after every use. And I also want to go back to the early days when we were canceled our meetings in person. And I think Councilmember Griffin brought this up when we were using the phones, that it was chaos. And it really was. Being on phones is not sufficient. Either we come up with a plan that we're all in council chambers together, or we're not. We're asking for trouble. We're asking for trouble. We're going to lose out on a significant amount of communication among ourselves. I mean, give Councilmember Kevin Shealy a lot of credit. He was the one who sort of got us directed on the Zoom business and away from the telephones that we were using. We were interrupting one another. We couldn't hear one another. People were calling in and out. It was a carnival at first until we were able to figure this out to use this technology that we're using now. So I would urge, if we're going to do this, we've got to do this in a way that protects us, all of us. There are a number of us who are 65 years old or above. I'll let everybody speak for themselves as to their age. I'm concerned about Councilmember Signage. He's still in treatment, and that means he is susceptible. So we've got to be either all in or not all in on this. And I don't think that we can handle this in a way that is piecemeal. So if we're going to do it, let's consider the plexiglass to be included with all this and make sure that all council members are available to attend this thing. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a couple of, specifics to ask if you were going to be moving us to the Gilliard in the next month or so. Have we thought about committee meetings? Because we talked about continuing committee meetings on Zoom. But if we are supposed to be on Ways and Means at 4:30 and then in council chambers at the Gilliard at 5, I think that would be a difficulty. And
we would do both.
Heard Ms. McGee say at sort of in the early part of her presentation that there is no way to have the Gilliard have virtual access. So I don't know how we would have council members who are choosing not to come to a location able to be on Zoom or something that would be more integral than just a phone call in. I would like to go back to Councilmember Del Chapo's reasonable suggestion. I know that, you know, we are lagging behind our compatriots in other jurisdictions. And frankly, I haven't ventured out. I've thought about going to the county for a couple of opportunities to speak, but it just isn't appealing, to be honest. And I don't know how they're doing it in terms of getting people in there that, you know, have a chance to listen to the proceedings. A lot of what I enjoyed when I was a citizen before I ever thought about joining your forces on council, I would come and listen to a lot of the committee meetings because that's where you hear things. Or I would listen to the whole council meeting as opposed to just coming in, you know, as a speaker and then having to leave or shuffle around. So I know that we're putting pressure on ourselves, and I do think that's the right way of thinking about this. And I do think that the homework that's been done is not for nothing. But I would just recommend that maybe we do let things play out. We just heard a, you know, 30-minute presentation about how things are spiking in the colder areas of our country and in Europe. And we're talking about November when the temperatures do go down significantly here. I would like to go through the next couple of months and see if we, God forbid, we have any surges that we manage. That's my thinking.
All right. So the intent was to include both Ways and Means and City Council together. And I think at this point with the technology that we have, if a council member chose not to participate in person, it would have to just be over the telephone. But anyway, is there a consensus? Y'all want to give, Chip, you want to weigh in on something, Chip McQueenie?
Mr. Mayor, and I just wanted to ask respectfully the City Council as a whole, if there's some way, and I promise not to weigh in, but if there's some way to be able to accept staff comments. I know some staff people who are in different situations than me. I'm fortunate that I'm not in you know, any particular group that's of a category that's easily exposed to COVID, but I really don't want to go to the city hall with all of you. I love you all, but I really don't want to do that. I would really appreciate it, and I'm sure other members of staff who would have to be at meetings would appreciate it because it does affect their health. If there would be some way, potentially even anonymously, you'll know if it's me because I write long letters, but even anonymously for city staff to comment before we do something like that. I'm going to be the one that sticks my neck out, but that's what I do. Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. All right. Could I get a consensus of hands? Y'all want to try it in November or push it back to January?
January.
Who would like to try an in-person meeting at the Gilliard in November?
I'll do it.
Well, it looks about even. Okay, that helps. All right, I'm gonna ask staff to give us some comments and report back to you at our next meeting.
Well, Mr. Mayor, why don't we just put a motion on the floor and vote it up or down?
Well, I'm okay with that. I mean, it looked like 6-6 to me.
6.
But I didn't take a accurate head count. Y'all want an accurate head count? Who's in favor of having an in-person meeting at the Gilliard in November, just to try? I see Griffin, Appel, Brady, Saccharin, Waring, Shealy. Anybody else? Mitchell? So y'all want me to be the tiebreaker?
Well, you are anyway. I mean, this is a parliamentarian issue. I think you set the meetings, Mayor, and you've got the right under the emergency ordinance we put before you anyway. So.
I understand. I was just hoping to have a better consensus, larger.
Mayor,
Mr. Mayor, I would like to hear from the staff. I do think that's an excellent suggestion that Mr. McQueenie made of us. So you would have time to come back to us on the 27th, correct?
That's
tell
correct.
us what your tiebreaker decision is. We'll have 2 more weeks of COVID results. I don't feel compelled to vote right this minute. I might change my mind.
All right. Madam Clerk, did you have a comment?
That I was just going to suggest that we do have one more meeting, what Councilwoman Jackson was saying. We do have one more meeting before November. So there's still another meeting to discuss it if council would like to.
Okay. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to ask staff if they'll chime in and give us any of their comments and recommendations, and then come back to you either with another vote or cast my tie-breaking vote by the next meeting. Councilmember Sacklin.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick suggestion, perhaps. Can we reach out to local municipalities, other businesses, and kind of get an update on best practices to ensure that if we do this, we do it well. I mean, they're doing it, so it'd be nice to get some data to have that behind our decision. And I just want to, for the record, say that I'm for a in-person, but if any council member feels, uncomfortable, I fully support them staying at home or staff members staying at home.
Right. Understood. Thank you. So we'll check with what the others are doing. I have pretty good confidence in our team here that we've presented best practices to you, and that's why it may seem maybe even extreme to you, but safety was a big consideration in their recommendations to us, I can assure you. All right, moving on then. Council communications, a discussion regarding administrative decisions made by the mayor in regards to the increase in property taxes. There was a decrease in the millage rate, and Councilmember Griffin, I'll call on you. I did ask Amy Wharton to prepare a little presentation to share with council. And I'm glad you raised the issue because I think there's been a bit of confusion in the media in presenting what happens with any reassessment for that matter. Councilmember Griffin.
Yes, sir. I just thought that it would be valuable to have a public discussion of what actually happened because I read the newspaper articles and that sort of thing. And I think some clarification would do everybody a bit of good. So
absolutely.
If we can have that, that would be really great.
So without further ado, I'll call on Amy Wharton to come forward. And I must admit, it's a little complicated, but Amy, take it away.
Okay, 1 minute, please. Put this in the slideshow. Ugh. One second, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get it to go into a slideshow.
You got your share.
Okay. Is that working?
No. Not yet.
No. My computer is deciding to be difficult. Hold on 1 second. How about now?
Now it's coming on.
Okay. So state law requires us to set millage rates and roll back in reassessment years to avoid a windfall to the municipality, which is what we did. So a millage calculation, and I'm sorry, Councilmember Griffin, we'll get to where in terms of how the decisions are made every year. We'll go back to 2011, 2015 assessment years as well. It's not as straightforward as everybody thinks. There's 3 main factors. You have assessed value, which is performed by the county, the tax credit factor, which is based on an estimate of local option sales tax revenue in a given year. And we've talked about local option sales tax a lot, and that's the formula: total loss credited divided by total appraised value. We give back 100%, adding a layer of complexity when we actually decide on a millage rate and the tax credit factor. And an estimated decrease in loss revenue in 2020 reduced the tax credit factor that we assessed for 2020 taxes versus what we had budgeted for. Millage rate, the city has the most control, but it's still restricted by the state. As you all know, we have a millage bank that we have to comply with. So our 2020 millage calculation, we had 4 separate scenarios in our millage decision. It consisted of 4 separate tax credit factors. Our biggest issue is that our local option sales tax revenues are down this year from what we budgeted, which affects our tax credit factor. So we did 4 different scenarios with different tax credit factors to assess where it would put us in millage and in revenue. So within those tax credit factor options, we also had net millage decreases for the 4 separate millage calculation options that we have. So we had 16 different scenarios that we looked at when we were trying to determine what the 2020 millage rate would be in the reassessment. And so we also had to consider our anticipated reductions in revenue in 2021 as well. And also you need to think about going forward, additional expenditures that we'll have. We'll have 2 new fire stations coming online within the next 2 to 3 years. So I'll go through the scenarios. Stop me if you need to. I'm trying to go fast because I know it's late. Our first scenario was based on a tax credit factor equal to the amount of local option sales tax revenue that we expect to collect this year. So that takes into consideration the reduction in revenue that we're expecting, our losses. So what we had budgeted a tax credit factor of 0.00087. Doing this would actually reduce the tax credit factor to 0.00069, just based on the revenue that we expect to receive. If you go higher than that, then it puts us at risk of paying back more than we actually collect. So this was the first scenario that we looked at. If you see right here, 2019, the 79.6 millage rate, that's our 2019 millage. And then these are the 4 options that you have when you do reassessment. You have rollback only, you have rollback plus CPI, you have rollback plus population, and then you also have rollback plus CPI and population. And those were the millage rates that we were given by the county to assess, to do the reassessment. So if you see, using a tax credit factor of 0.00069, it's not as much of a millage reduction, obviously, as we had initially anticipated when we budgeted our 2020 revenues. So net millage is here. And then going down, the net millage decrease, which would be the rollback for each of those scenarios, would be those millage rates. Do you see what I'm talking about? I just want to make sure I'm being clear.
So this is one scenario. We did not choose this scenario, but it by way of explanation, it's just the process that Amy went through with each scenario.
So the 2 columns that are highlighted in green were actually the best options for the city. Problem is it didn't provide much of a rollback to our citizens, but in keeping, looking forward, the millage rate and then with the tax credit factor, making sure that we're protecting ourselves from paying back more than we actually collect, this is the best scenario for the city. And then the revenue, because there's been talk about staying revenue neutral. I just wanted to show you what would happen with revenues in each of the scenarios as well. So we budgeted $18.8 million in 2020 with using the millage reduction at rollback plus CPI of 74.3 mils. We would it could have provided a $7.4 million in tax revenue over our 2020 budgeted amount. But you have to remember too, it's not just based on rollback and reassessment, all that. There's growth in there, the new property added for tax rolls, accessible transfers of interest. You have homes that were sold, so then they wouldn't have been, the 15% cap wouldn't have been applicable to them. And then you have some people that have substantial improvements, so the 15% cap wouldn't apply to them either. So there's a lot of factors that go into this as well. The second scenario we looked at was because when we're looking at our estimated revenues and our expected loss in local option sales tax, we only have 6 months of revenue right now to do that projection. So we thought maybe we're being a little bit too conservative. So we upped the amount that perhaps we might collect for local option sales tax, just trying to give more of a tax credit factor to our citizens and to look at a better rollback net millage decrease for them as well. So that made our tax credit factor 0.00073, which is still down from the 0.0087 that we budgeted. But using this tax credit factor, we are taking a risk that we could give back a little over $1 million more in local option sales tax revenue than we receive. But it does give a little bit more of a rollback in millage to our citizens than scenario 1. So for us, this was our second most favorable option for the city. In revenue, the additional revenue we could have received is about $6 million for both rollback plus CPI and rollback plus CPI in population. I forgot to tell you that, again, the highlighted in pink, those were our two where we thought the city would be most fiscally stable, keeping the millage at a little bit higher than rolling it all the way back to the 72.25. And then if you have to take into consideration the $1 million that we could possibly overpay. So the net additional revenue we could receive would be either 4.9 or 5.3. Are you still with me? Okay. Third scenario was based on local option sales tax, keeping the same local option sales tax revenue that we budgeted, which would make the tax credit factor of 0.00075. This would mean that we could potentially give back $1.675 million more in local option sales tax than we collect. It does, as you can see, give more of a rollback in millage to our citizens, but we felt the risk of having to pay back that much lost, it was a much less favorable option for the city. And then this is the revenue projections. And I just kept it at rollback plus CPI and rollback plus CPI and population, because those were the two that are most advantageous to keeping the city fiscally stable. And so with this, we could see initial 5.4 to 5.8 million in tax revenue, but then you have to take in consideration the additional loss that we would end up having to pay back from what we collect. So the additional tax revenue would be either 3.7 or 4.1.
There will be a test on this immediately after our meeting.
I do have a written test that I'll email to everyone later. Scenario 4 was keeping our tax credit factor as we budgeted at 0.00087. It was much too risky and unfavorable for us. We'd end up having to pay 4.825 million more in loss back than we received based on this using that tax credit factor. As you can see, we would end up we would lose almost $2 million if we went with that scenario. Keep going. Any questions?
I have a question, Amy. How many scenarios are there?
That's it. I'm done. So within each of these, there's 4, with these 4 embedded, that's the 16 I was talking about. So, and looking at all these scenarios, scenario 2 at rollback plus CPI and population offers the best balance of millage rollback and fiscal stability for the city. Provides a little higher rollback than the first scenario, considers need to alleviate impacts of revenue losses in 2021. And although at a slight risk to the city with that potentially $1 million we might have to pay back, it provides a little higher local option sales tax credit, which helps the net millage decrease or the rollback. Make sense?
So when the average citizen sees a headline in the paper that says City of Charleston raises property taxes by 3%,
that's it.
Actuality, all we did was adjust our millage rate so that we didn't overpay.
we rolled the actual operating millage back, but we had to adjust the sales tax credit factor is really what we did. But I'll keep going, then maybe hopefully that will be a little bit more clear.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. So really, this is just a visual. Here, right here is our fiscal year 2019 millage, and we could roll back to any of these options here. These are all our legally allowable rollback ranges, the 7.3, 72.5, 74, 74.3. Does that make sense? So in 2011, we calculated millage using rollback plus population, but there was no percentage of CPI available to use that year because it was 0. So the population was 1.9. Total allowable percentage increase of millage was 1.9%, and that's what we used. The operating millage decreased from 77.1 mils to 76.8 as a reduction of only 0.3 mils. Total millage drainage, including drainage, was 78.8, with 79.1 being the prior year millage, still a 0.3 mils deduction from year to year. And so I just wanted to note that in the recession, the rollback in millage was not that significant. Right now, we're rolling back an equivalent of 1.85 mils, or 5, and just looking at operating millage, it's a decrease of 5.3 mils or 6.12% reduction. In 2015, we calculated using rollback plus population, CPI plus population. So it's 1.46, 1.88% population. This is all kind of goes into the calculation of our millage bank. Total allowable increase of millage rate was 3.34%. We only used 2.9% in 2015. But that year we had also budgeted a 1.5 mil addition in taxes for public safety infrastructure. So I believe, I wasn't part of it, but I believe that that was some of the reason why we didn't use the full 3.34% that we could have used, because we had already raised millage 1.5 mils. Operating mills decreased from 80.3 to 78.1, and that was a operating mills reduction of 2.2. Total millage, including drainage and public safety, was 81.6. Prior year total millage was 82.3. So the total reduction in millage was 0.7 mils from fiscal year 2014 to 2015. And this is where they talk about the administrative decision that you saw in the paper. So no special meetings of councils were required or called when the millage rates were set in 2011 or 2015 during those reassessment years. We complied with state law. We do not go above the county's millage calculation for rollback plus CPI and population. And we just did the same exact thing that we've done in all the prior reassessment years. We've never brought that to council. So in our calculation, one of the other things was that was suggested that any rollback option other than straight rollback results in a tax increase. And using the 72.25 straight rollback millage would keep the city revenue neutral, meaning no increase in tax revenues. On average, the city would just get the same amount of tax revenues, basically what it's saying. And if you look here, using that millage, it's right, where we would just see a small decrease in our tax revenue. It's pretty much neutral. But what nobody's considering is that we give 100% of local option sales tax back. So you would have to take that into consideration. Oh, my lights just went completely out in this building. Hold on one second, sorry. Okay, it came back on, sorry. Sometimes. So in addition to using the straight rollback calculation, the city stays revenue neutral, but it does not mean that a person won't experience an increase in their taxes. So I have another slide that calculates the impact of the millage rates just using straight rollback, just so you can see what it does to a person's property taxes. And I use the 0.00073 local option sales tax that it will be on everybody's 2020 tax bills. And then Berkeley County residents are experiencing a tax decrease actually this year because they were reassessed last year and they did not get the benefit of the rollback. So they're getting that this year. That makes sense. So this is just straight rollback, no CPI, no population, anything like that. 2019 at our 79.6 millage rate, that would be what their taxes were. If they had no reassessment increase at all, they would actually have a little bit of a decrease in their tax bill. But if they had their reassessment was the full 15% cap, then they would have an increase in their taxes. So I just wanted to make that clear. A lot of this has to do with the value of their property is increasing, their investment is increasing in their houses, and that's what a lot of what is causing that tax increase. Make sense? And then this is Berkeley County. You see, they'll get a little bit of a break this year in their taxes.
That should make Councilmember Del Chapo happy. And all of us.
Absolutely.
So like I said before, calculating millage isn't as straightforward as you think. You know, there's a lot that we have to take into consideration. We thought long and hard about it. We did those 16 different scenarios to try to just do the best that we could for the citizens and for the city, make sure that we're financially stable and maximizing rollback and preventing the need for future tax increases at the same time. So summarizing the 2020 millage rollback, operating mills in 2019 was 79.6. Operating millage rate is 74.3. This is actually the lowest operating millage in the past 10 years at least. We didn't go past 10 years, so I'm not really sure, but I know it's at least the past 10 years. Operating millage reduction of 5.3 mils, 6.12% reduction, and net millage reduction after tax credit factor of 1.8 mils.
All right. Well, thank you, Amy, for putting all that together. It is, as I said at the beginning, a little complicated. Any questions for Amy on any of that? Councilmember.
I did more of a comment, Mayor, and Amy, thank you, because we went through this exercise, and I think at our last ad hoc budget meeting, and it is complex, and you had to sit through this stuff several times to sort of absorb all of this. But one of the things I think the public just needs to be aware of, and we've had these discussions about the option sales tax, that we give back to our citizens 100% of the option sales tax benefit, and not a lot of the other municipalities around here do that. And so I think the effort that we want to communicate to the community is that we try to come up with ways to keep the citizens' tax bill down as low as possible, balancing what you just said, Amy, that is our responsibility to keep our solvency, keep our bond rating up. That's all very critical, that we're being responsible stewards in the process of doing that, balancing those two compelling interests of our citizens and our stewardship responsibilities. So thank you for putting all that together.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councilmember Jackson. You're on mute.
Okay, sorry. Thank you very much, Amy. I every time you go over something like this, I try to retain it, and it just, you know, so I'm simple when it comes to numbers. I love doing my taxes, and I'm thinking about, you know, numbers and the concepts and making the decisions. And when I got the obvious question from other jurisdictions and council members, and I heard from a couple of people who said, "Wow, we'd love to be able to just make an administrative decision." And I think that is really one of the primary questions that I heard from people. Why didn't it have to come to council to go through all of this before we set the millage rate and decided on the 100% give back of the lost? And I think really for me, simplistically, is we have a strong mayor in the city of Charleston. Mount Pleasant doesn't, town of James Island doesn't, Folly Beach doesn't. So that is the tradition and the precedent. And whether council ever took a vote back in Mayor Riley's era, I don't know. But for me, that was a very logical answer. And the other thing is the property tax is based on assessments that are done universally every 5 years. And if your property is so fortunate to have increased in value, and you haven't done a thing to it and you're a primary owner, basically you have a very limited cap of increase, but you do get an increase because our property values have gone up exponentially in the last 5 years. The majority of the money that we're going to see as revenue increases, the 7 million, is coming from properties that have turned over so that they are paying more based on their current value when they were sold and repurchased, and also the new construction. So I think if we can just, I don't know where the reporter who had the headline that made everybody, stand up and ask all these questions. I don't know how she picked up on a 3% increase, but you have done over the top, Amy, tonight to set that record straight. And hopefully if anybody's got questions, they can write to us. We're going to be talking about this as we go on through the budget. But frankly, this is an amazing outcome that we have not chosen to really increase taxes to any significant extent in a cost-cutting budget year when we really need the money in order to keep the city supplied and supported to the extent that taxpayers rely on us to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember Waring?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I think part of this was and believe me, I know I'm gonna get arrows in my back when I say this, was a very unfair article that was put in the newspaper. I don't necessarily think it was you, Mr. Mayor, or certainly wasn't Amy, but I'm sure a good explanation was given, but the article was written as though, it was a dictator that came in there and increased the taxes, and that just wasn't the case. It was just an adjustment in the millage, and obviously after assessment, that's right, a downward adjustment in the millage, and that was not acknowledged in the article. Because I got to be frank, when I first saw it, I thought the same thing. Wait a minute, we can't be increasing taxes on the whole citizenry unilaterally like that. And that just wasn't the case. Obviously, I reached out to Amy, and obviously when I found out it was just adjustment of the millage, then it's really not a non-issue. But anyway, I would hope that that journalist was on this meeting and saw that academic explanation. And hopefully we'll get a little bit more favorable article in the newspaper tomorrow or the next day. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Amy. I really, really appreciate it.
She really did a good job.
Yeah. Thank you.
She always does a good job.
Yeah.
I'll say. Absolutely. She keeps us straight. Thank you, Amy. So next, we did have a request also to discuss placement and enforcement of business and political signs in the city of Charleston. Councilmember Shade.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity, and I'll try to be as brief as I possibly can. And Councilmember Waring brought this to my attention at one of our West Ashland Revitalization Commission meetings. There's been a proliferation of signs throughout the city, and a lot of them are business signs. And I just double checked our municipal codes. A lot of these signs are illegal signs in the way that they're designed. They call these feather signs or banana signs. They're up and down San Wittenberg Boulevard, Old Town Road, and St. Andrews Boulevard. And people complain about this to me frequently. It looks like it's a carnival over in West Ashland in particular. And in addition, we have a specific city ordinance that deals with political signs in right-of-ways. And oddly enough, I was cleaning out my attic this weekend, and I went through a stack of newspapers. I don't know why I was keeping them, but I found a newspaper article dated November 12, 1996. And then it had this article about the signs removals cost taxpayers back in 1996, $5,400 was reported by then Department of Traffic and Transportation Director Howard Chapman. Somewhere along the way, we have lost the enforcement of these signs. And I don't know if it falls directly within TNT or livability or public works, but there are signs everywhere. I just want them to have a uniform enforcement of removing these signs and getting them off the right of way particularly political signs. It's that time of season. I know people do this. We're all candidates for political office. That's why we're here. And I'm sure I'll be one of the first ones to fess up to that I'm probably guilty of putting down signs and where there shouldn't be. But we've got to have a uniform enforcement of what we're doing with these signs and quit having, particularly what it actually looks like is some kind of just circus going on over there. So that's my vent. I don't know if anybody wants to chime in on that. I appreciate it. But I would like to see the city maintain some kind of uniform enforcement of taking these signs down, particularly ones that are not legal in any circumstance, and the ones that are in the right of way. They pose a hazard to the community, and they're not supposed to be there. So thank you for hearing me out there.
Well, thank you. Would anyone else like to chime in?
I have to, Mr. Mayor. I got called out on that one. The chairman is right. West Ashley chairman is right. It's part of basically cleaning up West Ashley. Putting the signs in the right of way, a lot of times they end up in our ditches and end up clogging them, frankly, some of the drainages. So we do a good job when we run. In other words, when you run, Mr. Mayor, or I run and I put my sign in the right of way, our people come and pull them up. But the other elections, we kind of look the other way, and we got to do better than that. If it's in the right of way, we got to clean it up. I saw one of the areas where your predecessor, Aubrey Alexander, fought right there, and myself fought to get some landscaping put at St. Andrews Boulevard, Old Town Road, and Ashley River Road. We got nice plants coming up there. Matter of fact, they're all in bloom right now. And now we got signs stuck all over the landscape. So, we got to do better than that. So, the nickname that we want to get away from, or the ugly nickname, West Trashley, this contributes to that. We don't want that. So, you don't see this on Coleman Boulevard. You don't see this on Johnny Dodds Boulevard. So we don't want to see this West. I actually don't want to see it James Island or Johns Island either. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. I do believe, particularly around political season, election time, that it's everywhere. It's not just West Ashley. Business signs are a different matter, and I note them myself. And sometimes we're not as vigilant when people put up temporary signs for their business. They're having a going out of business sale or something like that. Technically, those signs are illegal as well. And I called Dan and Keith about one company a few months ago. They literally had about 20 signs, maybe 40, and they put them all in a row in the public right of way. And of course, it was illegal. Then they'd come in the next night and pick them up and put them on another street, So I think some vigilance on both is appropriate. I would say that both Democrats and Republicans, it's a bipartisan consensus of the candidates that they can put signs wherever they want to. We do send them a letter at the beginning of the election season. And I see Keith Benjamin's online. His folks go out and pull them up, and so does Livability. But I from now until November 3rd, even if we got everyone up tomorrow, they'd be out the next night. So it is quite an effort right here at the home stretch of an election. And I've had more than one candidate call me recently complaining that we were picking up their signs. We continue to do a lot of education. Keith or Dan, y'all want to add anything?
I'll just add something real quick. We do send out a letter. We sent out a letter to all candidates, both sides, on I believe it was September 11th. A letter went out to all candidates with both the reminder of the ordinance, the copy of the ordinance, and also what the stipulations are. Please believe that we get technicalities, the difference between right-of-way, easement, right-of-way but maintained by the private owner, and otherwise. So people find their ways to say what they need to do. I do need to defend our traffic operations crews. Their primary obligation is maintenance. And so we're actually in West Ashley trying to fulfill a number of the work orders that we've been asked to do. So we're trying to do that and also pick up the signs, but we will make sure we do our due diligence to address the political signs as well.
Dan?
Yes, sir. And we obviously are in cooperation with Keith's department. We have notified political headquarters as well, trying to educate and trying to pick these signs up in cooperation with traffic and transportation as we see fit. But you are 100% correct. We will pull them up and they will be replaced overnight. So it's an ongoing battle, but I promise that when this is all said and done and election's over, they will be clean and clear and hopefully, looking better West Ashley.
Thank you. Councilmember Appel, did I pass over? Did you have your hand up a minute ago?
I was just going to say, I'll be so relieved when this election season's over. I volunteer to go pick up the signs in my district.
Amen. Councilmember Saccharin.
Thank you, Mayor. Keith and Dan, you've got a bunch of my signs. Where can I pick my signs up for my campaign?
It's gone.
I think they're gone now.
Is there a way to just house those all in one place, like some sort of big garage where the candidate can come pick them up?
Well, I'll tell you what, I would invite all of you on a ride along with me personally. And you can help me pick them up and we'll get them right back to you.
I'll do it.
All right. To be fair, we do keep a number of them for when we do get the calls, and otherwise we know, especially those large ones are expensive. I used to be one of those politicals, so we definitely understand that. But we, as was said earlier, we got to enforce the ordinance too.
All right, let's try to move along. Councilmember Jackson, quickly.
I just want to say, I think we should all be glad that I watched on the news the other night. There was a reporter somewhere out in another state, and she was driving by neighborhoods where there were signs everywhere. And then there was a house that was literally wrapped like an American flag with a huge wall of their favorite candidate painted on it. So at least we don't have that in our community.
I've seen a lot of signs on a few properties, private property. Councilmember Shade.
And I'll just wrap this up, Mayor. And I do want to thank Keith and Dan and folks from the Public Works. They are very receptive to all of this. I barrage them with emails about it and they respond. But the other part of this, in addition to just its political signs, are these business signs that are illegally put up. So even after the political season's over, we just still need to be diligent on these other non-political signs that are floating around. So
understood.
Thank you, Dan and Keith, for what y'all do and being very responsive to all of this.
Please send us if there's areas or whatever of focus, please send them to us. Like I said, our crews are actually in West Ashley for our maintenance month. So if there's things we need to address, we can get right on top of them. Thank you.
Thanks. Pick them up. All right, council committee reports. License committee, Councilmember Gregory.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council. The license committee met on September 24th, 2020 at 3 p.m. We had one item on our agenda, and that was to review the business license ordinance, and we voted unanimously to adopt it as submitted by staff.
Great. Can I have a motion to
move for approval?
Second. Report, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, the ayes have it. I will note to everyone that the state legislature did pass a new ordinance this year allowing a kind of universal business license application process. It won't go into effect, I don't think, until another year. But we'll probably have to make some amendments to our local ordinance to be in compliance with the new state law. But it does allow us to continue to set our own rates. So we maintain that ability. It will be easier for businesses, particularly those that do business in multiple jurisdictions. All right, Committee on Public Safety, Councilmember Shade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Committee on Public Safety met on Thursday at 8 on October the 8th. It was about a 2-hour plus meeting. We received this preliminary report from the after action report prepared by the Charleston Police Department. We heard from Heather Malloy, Assistant Corporation Counsel, who went through a very painstaking chronology and comments and responses and recommendations on how to improve the city's response to the events of May 30, 31st and May 31st. The report was handed out to the public shortly before the meeting. We will have a follow-up meeting on October the 28th at 5:30, at which point we will receive more input from council members who will have an opportunity to digest this more thoroughly, and also at that point to receive public input and comment from the public as to the report. I have to commend Heather, the chief, and his two captains for the extraordinary work they put into this. Many man hours were put into this to prepare this report. It is comprehensive. I think a total pages of 62 pages with diagrams, maps, charts, things of that nature. So we're looking forward to the follow-up meeting on the 28th of October at 5:30.
Does anybody have any questions or comments? So we'll just accept that report as information, nothing to vote on at this time. Thank you again, Heather, Chief, and everybody that's been involved in this really detailed after action report, but importantly, setting the course forward for improvements in all that y'all do and we do. So thank you again for that effort. We look forward to the public comment period at the next public safety meeting. And then after that, we'll be able to bring the final report along with additional information that's being added at the request of committee members the other day, and your requests over the next couple of weeks. We'll bring a final report back to council for your acceptance. All right, next is our Committee on Community Development, Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes, okay, Community Development met on October 8th at 4:30 p.m. And we had quite a few items there. Under the old business, we had discussion and recommendation to City Council, and that was voted on and approved. And number 2, item under new business, I-1 with TD Bank, that was also approved. And number 2, we had a resolution that was certifying building up abandonment building tax credit. That was, excuse me, that was deferred. And number 2, we have the, number 3, we had review amendment for the Cooper River Bridge TIF allocation. And that was deferred. Chip McQueenie, he's going to be bringing that back to the Community Development Committee meeting. We're going to have another meeting, and then he'll be bringing that back to us. And the number 4, the discussion review of the minimum parking requirements. That was also for information only. We had a lot of discussion on that particular one also. So I think that was approved also to go to council, I believe.
Councilmember Appel brought that issue to the committee.
To council.
The planning department will work on a recommendation that was made that day and bring it back to the at your next meeting. So the one item that requires City Council
is the TD Bank.
Is the
TD Bank
cluster developments that was really brought to us by Councilmember Jackson. And we'll give first reading if someone would make a motion for that.
I move for approval, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
All right. Any discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. That'll be first reading, and we'll bring it back to you And does anybody want to make comments? We're good to go. All right. So next
Mayor.
is
Also on the first one, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
The discussion on the recommendation of City Council whether to extend the city ordinance governing the cluster development. That's the one we just got on, but we also have another one that was approved also. That was the TD Bank.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Yes, so I have to get a
We need your
motion on
approval
that.
of that.
Move to approval on that one.
Approval for our TD Bank Housing for Everyone grant opportunity application.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, the ayes have it. All right, did I catch everything? Okay.
Yep, that's it.
Next is our Committee on Recreation. Back to Councilmember Gregory again.
Mr. Mayor and Council, the Recreation Committee met on Monday, October 12th at 2 o'clock. There were items under new business, and the first was the municipal golf course proposed rates. And the committee, and I may need a little help from my committee members on this. We did make a recommendation to raise the rates for non-residents of the city. And I think it's the user rate, if I'm not mistaken.
The daily green fee.
Yeah.
$5.
$5?
$5.
Okay, thank you. And to raise other rates proportionately.
Yep.
Okay. And that was voted on unanimously by the committee. We also had an ordinance to give a stipend to our poet laureate, and that stipend amount would be $5,000, but that would go into effect in 2021, because I think in 2020 we may have the funds to be able to address that issue for the laureate. We also had an update on the Parks and Recreation Master Plan by Tom O'Rourke, who was extremely excited about the kind of progress that they have been making in getting the master plan together. It appears as though they are on schedule. And if I'm not mistaken, preliminarily, they should be completed sometime this month. And that did not require a vote. But B, little I, and double I will need council's approval, and I move accordingly.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Jackson?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I appreciate, I was able to observe the Recreation Committee meeting yesterday, and I know that you raised the tri-county rates while you were at the meeting. So when you say $5 tonight, doesn't that mean $5 above the $5 raise that the golf committee had already proposed?
Yes.
So essentially it's a $10 increase?
No.
What she's correct. It was $5 above what had been recommended to us.
Oh, yes.
Which is a $5 increase. So I don't know, is this going to be the carved in stone number that goes to the ad hoc committee for the budget, or to the finance office for the budget revenue stream, and then it will set the rates for the golf course to begin advertising? What we're doing right now, is that what I understand?
Well, correct. I think Marshall was going to proportionately adjust that middle tier based upon the $5 additional increase. Basically, folks will have 3 tiers for pricing. One for city citizens, which will be the lowest rate, and incredible deal particularly for this renovated course. Then a middle tier for citizens of the Tri-County area who are not citizens of Charleston. It'll be kind of a mid-range, but still less expensive, other than one course, than any other public course in the Tri-County region, and then a higher rate for out of the Tri-County region visitors, I guess you'd say.
Right, that's what I understand. I guess I would put in a plea to create a four tiers and give the Charleston County residents a different rate than the Tri-County residents. When you think about the checkerboard communities that a lot of us serve among, I mean, I have James Island and unincorporated county. Similarly, Councilmember Brady has unincorporated county, just a hop, skip, and a jump down on Johns Island. I really feel like, and my husband plays in the golf group, so it's very personal to us that, you know, people live in Riverland Terrace. And I know you made an ad announcement yesterday, Mary, about anyone who wants to annex in, you know, would be welcome, and they could get the city rate, which is all true if they have the ability to annex in. But some county members, people right now, don't live contiguous to a city property. And the town of James Island residents, who are county residents, you know, I live in a block where the majority of my neighbors are town of James Island. They've already done an annexation. I just feel like if we're going to be continuing to court and find ways to cooperate with our Charleston County colleagues and citizens, I just feel like that would send a really good message that we're giving a Charleston County rate and a Tri-County rate, and the other county rate, and then anyone else. So I would just throw that out there as a consideration. It wasn't appropriate for me to interject that yesterday, but the more I think about it, the more, if this is the final decision about rates, that would be my appeal to you all.
Well, it would go in the work for our budget for next year, and I can't say that council doesn't have the right to change it at any time. I would say once you get beyond 3 tiers, I would question how complicated it gets just to price somebody out. And I'll repeat again that middle tier for non-City of Charleston residents for the Tri-County area, which is our metro area. I mean, if you live in Cainhoy and you're not in the city limits, you know, kind of feel like you're part of the city, right, Marie? But you're in Berkeley County. You know, we're one metro region. And again, the rate that a metro region citizen would pay is a better deal than any other public golf course other than one other one. And that difference was only $1. So it's a great deal for Charleston County residents. It's a great deal for the metro area. Councilmember Griffin.
Mr. Mayor, I think Councilmember Seekings had his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Seekings and then Griffin.
My question was answered. Thank you very much.
Okay.
It's Mr. Mayor, I play a lot of golf too, and I'm a member at Shadow Moss. I mean, if you look on the Shadow Moss website, you have 2 tiers really, Tri-County, and then outside of that. The third tier is obviously the member who pays the membership fee monthly and then gets a very reduced rate. We are a municipal golf course, so we're not private. So our membership rate is really like being a City of Charleston resident. You're getting a member rate of living in the city, knowing that your tax dollars are paying for this course. So it makes sense to have a 3-tiered system like that, because if it was a private course, it would be the same way. So I think this makes the most logical sense.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor of those 2 items, little letter I and 2 with the poet laureate, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Next is our committee.
No, Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I have a question I want to discuss with the Recreation Committee before we leave the Recreation Committee report.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
thank you. I've got a call from several people who live up and down the Greenway who are interested in donating a bench, for example, or benches along the way, planting a tree in memoriam to people. And I'm being told that it's almost like an act of Congress to get that done. So I'm wondering if there's a way, given an issue to Mr. Chairman, on the Recreation Committee, to develop a policy when people want to donate a bench, or a neighborhood wants to donate a bench. Basically, we'll have a standard already set that we can send out to that person or that company or that neighborhood to do so. I think the master plan allows for that, but apparently I don't think it's been unfolding that way. So maybe at the next 2 weeks, Mr. Chairman, you can report back on that. I know you have a couple of other councilmen who Greenway runs through their district as well. Councilmember Ross and certainly Councilmember Brady. And we just want to help people improve the district, which actually helps improve the Greenway, which actually helps the city as well. I spoke to Danny Cassis along with Dominion. They're doing some work right now along the Greenway. And when they finish doing that work, they're going to obviously clean it up and probably restore it back better than it was before. This is another wonderful opportunity where Dominion would contribute along the beautification of that Greenway. So the process by which, if, for example, I wanted to donate a bench, what type bench would be allowed, and I guess the way it has to be installed and all, we need to find that out so it can be abbreviated. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
Oh, I'm sorry. I saw Councilman Gregory waving his hands. I didn't know whether they can hear me or not. So anyway, I throw that out for discussion, hopefully, so we can get something back in 2 weeks on that if possible. But something that shouldn't take 6 months or longer for somebody to give something to improve the Greenway.
Councilman Waring, I will start a conversation with our Parks and Recreation Department.
Right.
Because I do know that there is a bench program in Hampton Park.
Okay.
And what we could do is sort of start finding out what those guidelines are, how the what's the wheres, and see if we can adapt it accordingly for the Greenway.
Great.
We'll try to put that on the agenda within the next couple of weeks.
And something like, for example, if somebody wants to, and I know this has been done because I actually attended one, a tree that was planted in memoriam to a loved one, if they want to put a bench by that tree, for example. So not just a bench, but maybe a tree as well.
Okay, we'll start that.
Landscaping as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Next is Committee on Public Works, Councilmember Waring.
Yes, the committee met yesterday at 4 o'clock, and as soon as I get my agenda up here, we had an update on King Street Hughie drainage, which is pretty close to get to the point of being bidded out. We have an agreement with CWS to basically they're going to reimburse us for any improvements that fall in their framework that we pay for. They're going to come back and reimburse us 100%. There was a really nice grant that was accepted on behalf of Church Creek Drainage Basin in the amount of $1,345,000, which constitutes great work from part of our staff and everybody to get that grant, and had to have an in-kind matching donation of an additional $16,541, which was also approved. And then updates on Signal Point and an ordinance for flood hazard prevention control requirements was also passed unanimous. And we had an extensive discussion on Church Creek, not Church Creek, Central Park drainage system, and hopefully we got consensus on the funding to pay for the improvements to come. I'm gonna hold abeyance on Central Park for a second, but I'm gonna ask for approval on everything else I mentioned that was voted upon that you see listed, with the exception of Central Park and of course Signal Point. So I move for approval on the items that passed unanimous.
Second.
Got a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Now, I come back to church at the Central Park drainage. I don't know whether, Mr. Mayor, you want to have some input, Mr. Councilman Gregory, who certainly has been pointed up on this one right here and kind of got us going in the right direction. Mr. Fountain, if you want to. So then, Councilman Gregory, you have any comments on Central Park drainage system?
Yes, I do, because I really want to sort of give a shout out to Matt, because the presentation that you guys saw yesterday was presented to the neighborhoods probably about a week earlier. And, I'm still want to see something happen. But of course, as we went through the presentation by Matt, we're still quite a ways out between design, construction, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think that, from what I gleaned from our meeting yesterday, and with the mayor's input, your input, and other members' input, is that we are going to make this a drainage project a priority. And we are going to see whether or not there is some way that we can speed up the permitting process if possible. And, I was very pleased when I heard the mayor say at the meeting that, we think we have identified the resources to be able to do the project. So funding is not the issue. The issue is the process that we have to go through. But I do hope that Matt and his staff and working with the various agencies can attempt to speed up the process so that we can bring relief as soon as possible to the area. At one point, I thought that we can piecemeal it, but it does not appear as though we can do that.
No.
That it has to be done sequentially. And I do think that the neighborhood, when they were privy to the presentation, also understands that we can't short circuit the process, but that still does not ease the anxiety of trying to make sure that we get something done over there as soon as possible. So I just want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing that presentation to happen. And because it does send, I think, a message to the people of James Island that we are serious about trying to get a fix for just one of their drainage issues. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fountain, can you touch just briefly on that approval process that we're going to try to get expedited? And then after that, Mr. Mayor, can you touch on how you spoke about the funding and the momentum behind that after Mr. Fountain? And then that'll be the gist of my report.
Councilmember Appel had his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see it. Councilmember Appel?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, as one of the three James Island council members, this is a very important issue for my constituents. And I think that, the folks over in this area of James Island deserve a tremendous amount of credit. They have been leaders, not just on James Island, but the city as a whole, in bringing visibility and a sense of urgency to stormwater infrastructure improvements in their area. And I think that they deserve a lot of credit for that. None of this happening today, this great effort that's being led by Councilmember Gregory and Councilmember Jackson, with the help of Councilmember Waring and everybody, and the mayor and staff and everybody. It's a team effort. This wouldn't be happening without y'all. And if I may suggest that, or make a gentle recommendation, it seems as though a lot of the energy politically out there is directed over specific developments, specific projects that we don't like to see. And I think that's a whole different conversation. If we can find a way to harness the energy, the passion, the commitment of these residents towards helping reform our outdated, overly bureaucratic, time-consuming state and federal permitting requirements for cleaning out things as simple as a ditch. Guys, I was at the committee meeting yesterday. I heard the same thing that I've heard for projects all over my district and all over the city. 12 to 18 months for permits to clean out a ditch. We're not trying to fill in 100 acres to build apartments or something. This is a municipal government trying to improve and enhance its stormwater system. We're going to lose 1.5 years if some of these creative permitting expediting measures aren't successful. That's absolutely unacceptable, and we need to shift the political fire, so to speak, into getting reform in that much needed area, because the city of Charleston stands ready and committed to taking care of these infrastructure needs. We're going to do it. We're going to do it with the county. We're going to do it with ourselves, but we need help in reforming the system, frankly, so that more and more of these projects can get underway. They can get designed and they can get built quicker. And the permitting issue is a big one. It's not sexy, but it's important. And we need to be focusing on that. And of course, finding all the different ways to get more money pumping into these projects, because we've got issues all over the city. So sorry for that little commentary there, but I think this is important. And I think that this entire Central Park drainage area is very indicative of the challenges that we're facing citywide. And let's harness and keep this activated community moving forward, because we're going to need them, not just on James Island, but people all over the city to push for these improvements.
Thank you, Councilman Appel. As a matter of fact, you did such a good job on that. I'm going to ask Mr. Fountain to stand down. I mean, you really explained that wonderfully. Mr. Mayor, you want to touch on this, the funding piece and the momentum behind it, and then that'll be the extent of my report.
Okay. I also see Councilmember Jackson's.
I can't see everybody over here, so well, I'll go to Ms. Jackson. Ladies first. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I just want to follow up on Councilmember Appel. I mean, this is an urgent matter that we get this kind of general permit from the state agency, as well as approved in concept by the Army Corps, because it is detrimental to our ability to serve the drainage problems that we have. It has nothing to do with new construction, honestly. This improvements to Central Park Basin will be new construction, but what happens in the actual marsh is going to be just an upfit of existing infrastructure. So we're not adding anything new that hasn't already been there. But I do also think that we should acknowledge that this is one of the very best opportunities we have to be cooperative with other jurisdictions. When we first started talking about this general permit possibility with Senator Sen, because there was a DHUC staff person who was very eager to make this work. It was because the Georgetown and the PD had just acknowledged that because of their marsh and the ability to maintain it and go into it, they were able to go through the storm surge of Hurricane Irma that was originally projected to wipe out the city of Georgetown. And so they were as eager as the rest of us further south to get this general permit that would allow them to do things like that. So it really is a collective. I know the mayor, has great relationships up and down the coast. And I think this is the time for us all to bring all of our citizens and all of our influence together.
Mayor, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Mayor, just one quick.
Councilman Gregory.
Yeah. I mean, just so that everybody know, especially the new council members, we have been working on this since 2014. Okay, this is nothing new. Okay, along with the neighborhoods and the neighborhood associations. Okay, and I agree. If somehow we can take this energy, okay, and move it to the next level, it would be great. But right now, the people on the island wants to see some results.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, we've been working since 2014 on this issue, and it took us this long just to get the study completed. So we have some issues as a city that we need to take care of as well, okay, in terms of how long it takes for us to do a study. From 2014 to now, that's a long time just to get the study completed. So it's not just the permitting, okay? We have some issues internally, I think, that we need to address as well to make sure that we get things done as quickly as we can. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you.
All right, now, Mr. Mayor.
So, yeah, I will be the first to acknowledge that the report that we finally now have completed from AECom in partnership with the County of Charleston took longer than it should have. But we are now at the place where we got a plan, where we've got 4 projects, 4 areas, if you will. We've decided to take 2 and give 2 to the county, working in conjunction, but we got to do the lower end of the basin first. The city is responsible for that. I've let Matt and AECom know in no uncertain terms that we will fund the engineering, the next step in the process. We're saving money from the refinancing of our bond that we recently approved, which will mean about $400,000 a year in savings for our stormwater fund. That's more than enough to take the next step. And we are committed as a council, I am as mayor, to see these projects through as expeditiously as we can now that we have the study done. And the county, I believe, is stepping up to the plate on their side of it as well. In addition, our annual CDC recommendation for either roadway or drainage project included one of the projects in this basin. And so this on the city's dime, really, even though it comes through the county, it was we have the right to one project. We picked up another $400,000 or so to go to the basin. So we're underway. It will take some time to get those to follow that process, but there's nothing stopping us now. If somebody wants to see the full presentation, it's recorded on that meeting from yesterday, and Mr. Fountain has it and can make it available. If you want to see it, I'd hate to ask him to come forward and just do 2 minutes. You got to see the whole thing if you're interested, anybody on the meeting call tonight. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's clear from the committee, from this council, we have a path forward. We are going to get this done. We're all committed to it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So, and I think that was all that needed approval.
Yes.
So I'm going to go on to Committee on Traffic and Transportation. Councilmember Signage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Committee on Traffic and Transportation did meet sometime in 2020. I think it was today. What we learned principally is that Mr. Benjamin and his team are working really hard in tough conditions and are doing a great job. There were 3 things that were reported out that we need to vote on. One is we have recommended unanimously to enter into a maintenance agreement for Glen McConnell Parkway, which is principally for the multi-use path. Same with the Folly Road corridor. There's a maintenance agreement that we need to enter into so we can make sure that the bike lanes stay safe and painted a different color. And finally, there was a resolution that we undertook and adopted between the private developer and the city to allow for a no noise zone on the train tracks that are behind the development just near the entrance to the Ravenel Bridge. It's a conglomeration of governmental entities that have to do all this work, and all we're doing is handing this off to the private developer to make sure that that's a quiet zone. So with that, unless Mr. Benjamin has anything to add, I would ask your approval for items A, B, and C. And again, commend Mr. Benjamin and his team for their hard work. Thank you.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Anything further, Councilmember Signage? That's good.
No, sir, that concludes my report. See you back again next time.
Thank you. Committee on Ways and Means, Councilmember.
Move for approval.
Second.
Point of order.
Yes, sir.
Since we did amend.
Move for approval as amended.
That's what I was going to ask.
All right. So number 14 was amended on the Ways and Means Committee. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Now we have bills up for.
I make a motion we take numbers 1 through 7 together.
Second. through 7.
Second.
We got a second. We got discussion on any of those items. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Move for approval of third reading.
Now for third reading and ratification, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. We have one bill up
Move for approval.
first reading.
Second.
This is Height District regarding Laurel Island. We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. The next regular meeting will be on Tuesday, October 27th at 5 o'clock. Anything for the good of the order? Councilmember Mitchell, then Shade.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I want to ask Mr. Benjamin after the meeting, would he give me a call? I want to get something, Mr. Mayor. I think you and I drove around on Jackson Street and Lee Street, I think a couple months ago, and we saw the cars was parked on this grassy area, which you all put signs up, and they have stopped parking on the grassy areas. Now I drive around at night. Went down last night, night before last, well, this whole week at night, and I count on the streets now from Meeting Street on Lee Street, from Meeting Street to America Street, all on Hanover Street, Nassau Street, from Jackson Street, from Meeting Street to Hanover Street, 175 cars parked on the streets. So the people in that area, no one can park there who live around that area anymore, because I don't know where these cars are coming from. I know the building was built there and they had a parking garage there also, but I don't know if they have people staying with them or what, but they have so many cars in that area at night. If you go around there right now and drive through there right now, you'll count between 170 cars on the streets. And you know, we looked at Lee Street and was going to use Lee Street as an overage for buildings that we're going to build at the second phase of the housing and third phase of the housing and the community center by South Carolina State University. But the way it stands now, there's not going to be any parking space there at all on Lee Street, Jackson Street, Hanover Street, Nassau Street. None of those streets have any parking. They're parking all over the place. Right. And that's every night.
We'll get you all together. We may have to look at some kind of modified residential parking district or something for that area.
We're going to have to do something. I don't want to, have the people there hurted by doing this, but I don't know where all these cars are coming from. And I'm saying that the building there was rented to, for students, but I believe they're having other people staying there too, I guess, but bringing all these cars. But I mean, there was 170 cars there for the 2 nights that I counted. I went and drove down each one of the streets, all the in-between streets. And the people who live there now, they haven't probably parking. They're parking sometime in Martin Park lot, and just walking back to the building. So it's a problem. We got a big problem there now.
Right. Councilman, we talk all the time, so I'll give you a shout. That's also unregulated area, so we got to figure that out.
I don't know where they're coming from.
Councilmember Shade and then Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a plug to remind everybody, tomorrow is the West Ashley Revitalization Commission meeting at 5:30, and we're going to receive a report from the County Transportation Authority as to the improvements for the Old Town District. I would encourage you, if you're interested, to see what is planned for this comprehensive redo of several intersections along San Wittenberg, Orange Grove Road, Old Town Road, to log in and participate in tomorrow's Revitalization Commission meeting.
Terrific. Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to give some attention to West Ashley Revitalization. There was a grassy Burger King that was reported a couple of times there. The grass has been cut, so thank Mr. Riccio and thank Eric Pullman for getting all that done. The relevance of the committee is picking up. And the most important reason I want to be recognized tonight is that I think our clerk of council did a great job tonight.
Yes. Yes.
The transition has been seamless. I'm just so proud of her. I mean, when she shouted stop, those people stopped. I appreciate that. She did a good job herding all of us today. So thank you so much, Jennifer Cook, for doing what you did tonight.
Congratulations, Jennifer.
Well, thank you.
Ditto, Madam Clerk. Thank you so much. All right.
All right.
No further business this evening. We stand adjourned. See you soon.
All right.
Thank you.
Braves.
Bye.
Hi, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.